I'd like everyone to sit down so we can begin the meeting. The town clerk will now do the roll call.
David Becker. Here. Michael Hurley. Here. Gaylord Meyer. Here. Carolyn Richmond. Here. Eric Sunman. Here. Peter Ambrose. Here. John Matola. Here. Jeffrey Steele. Here. Chad Stewart. Keith Varian. Here. Ed Bateson. Here. Tom Conley. Here. Hank Ferentz. Here. David McKenzie. Here. Mary McCullough. Here. Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Here. Arthur Hugg. Here. Amy Mezoff. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Matt Ambrose. Joshua Garskoff. Here. Christopher McAleese. Ruth May. Here. Ann Stamler. Here. Christopher Brogan. Here. Leonora Campbell. Here. Julie Gottlieb. Here. Sheila Marmion. Here. Jay Wolk. Here. Jennifer Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hopkins. Here. Eric Newman. Here. Mark Patton. Here. Hal Schwartz. Here. Kathy Braun. Here. Dana Carey. Here. Alan Marks. Here. Tom McCarthy. Jeffrey Stopa. Here. Bill D'Amica. Here. Joe Fellner. Here. Ellen Jacob. Here. Nick Marabla.
Present.
Carol Pontrelli.
Here.
Lee Hannum.
Here.
Kenneth Lee.
Here.
Bruce Ryan.
Here.
Carol Way.
Here.
David Weber.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I had asked someone to attend earlier to do the pledge, but he wasn't able to make it tonight. So we're just going to go ahead with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could also just remain standing for a moment of silence. I also ask you to keep in your thoughts the recent passing of former RTM Majority Leader Jamie Millington's mother, Diane, who passed away at the age of 71 after a fight with cancer on April 26. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's special RTM meeting. It's a special meeting since it was rescheduled from its original date of April 23rd. We have a packed room tonight, as expected. Aside from a couple of standard agenda items, we'll be hearing budget appeals from 2 departments, and then any intentions to cut the budget will be presented tonight. Those items and the budget itself may be discussed, but there will be no vote tonight. Further, tonight is the night for the public to speak on the budget. There will be no opportunity next Monday, May 7th, to do that. We're going to move into item number 2, which is to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 26, 2012. Are there any proposed amendments or revisions to the minutes from the body? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve? Representative Bateson, a second. Representative Schwartz. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? And the minutes pass. Item number 3 is to consider and act upon the following reappointments to the Town Facilities Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Harry R. Ackley, Sr., Republican, 25 Wagon Hill Road, term of July 2011 to 2015. This item was referred to the Standing Committees on Finance, Legislation Administration, and Public Works and Planning. May I have a motion to approve this item? Representative Ambrose, a second. Representative Smay. We'll now go over committee votes. L&A, there were 7 members present. Representatives DiMartino, Brogan, and Varian were absent. No action was taken since Mr. Ackley was not present. Finance, 9 members were present. Representative Ryan was absent. All 9 were in favor of approving Mr. Ackley. Public Works and Planning, all 10 members were present. 8 members approved, 0 against, 2 abstentions, Representatives Mezoff and Palmer. We're now going to have discussion. By the way, if I get any of these committee votes wrong, just let me know. We're now going to have discussion among the body on this item. Are there any members? Hearing none, are there any members of the public? Okay, we're now going to do a voice vote on the motion to approve Mr. Ackley as reappointment to the Town Facilities Commission. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Ackley, congratulations. Stick around for the next one. Item number 4, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments to the Riverfield Elementary School Building Committee as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Harry R. Ackley, Sr., Republican, 25 Wagon Hill Road, and Dorothy D'Amica, Republican, 245 Uncor Road. This item was referred to all standing committees. May I have a motion to approve? Representative McCullough. A second. Representative, was that Weber? I'll now go over committee votes. L&A, no action was taken on Mr. Ackley. All 7 members voted in favor of approving Ms. D'Amica. Finance, all 9 were in favor of approving Mr. Ackley and Ms. D'Amica. Public Works and Planning, 8 for Mr. Ackley, 8 approved, 0 against, 2 abstentions, Representatives Mazoff and Palmer. Ms. D'Amica was approved, all 10 in favor. Public Health and Safety, 8 members present. I'm sorry, I didn't list that earlier. Representatives Fellner and Smay were absent. Vote was 8 in favor, 0 against, and both for D'Amica and Ackley. I think I got that right. Education Recreation, 8 members were present. Representative Stewart and Marks were absent. Both members were approved, 7 approved, 0 against, 1 abstention, with Representative McCullough abstaining. We'll now have discussion among the body on this item. Hearing no discussion, any members of the public wish to comment? Okay, we will now have a voice vote on this item to approve Mr. Ackley and Ms. D'Amica as appointments to the Riverfield Elementary School Building Committee. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed? Abstentions? Representative D'Amica. Why would you do that? This motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. D'Amica. Mr. Ackley, again. Thank you for serving. We're now going to move to item number 5, which is to hear and consider an appeal by the Public Works and Parks Director from the following vote of the Board of Finance pertaining to the Public Works Operations 5030 budget. To cut 2 utility accounts, electric account number 54131 and heating fuel account number 5414. The request for the utilities, the electric utilities, is $28,000 to be restored, and the utilities heating fuel is $11,000 to be restored. Now, the way this is going to work, this is the first time on my watch I've had to deal with an appeal, but we're going to first hear the Public Works Director, Richard White, present his appeal on both accounts at once, followed by the Board of Finance presentation on its decision, represented by Mr. Bolito. I feel like a judge here. But first, anyways, yes, let's go right to the appeals. Mr. White. Jerry, is there a place you'd like them to stand over there? By the door. Just right in front of the door? All right. Good escape route, right?
The request is to restore these 2 accounts as the moderator has mentioned. And what happened is I believe the Board of Finance inadvertently cut these 2 utility accounts from my budget. The intent was they're related to the Fairfield Theater Company for $28,000 for their electrical account and $11,000 for the heating fuel account. And I believe the intent was to just track these two accounts separately within my budget, but not to cut them. You'll also see them, the same amounts on page 131 of the Fairfield Theater Company budget, so I don't think you'd want to,
So
they're already being paid for, in other words,
Right.
there. So I think the Board of Finance can, I remember the Board of Finance can confirm that that was inadvertently cut.
Mr. Bolito?
Thanks, Rich. Go ahead, Chris.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm Rob Bolito. I am the Vice Chairman of the Board of Finance. Mr. Flynn, our Chairman, is absent tonight. He's away in California on business, so he sends his regrets. Basically, what Mr. White said is correct. Our intent was to separate out these items because we wanted to get a better handle on tracking expenses related to the Fairfield Theater Company, and we did inadvertently cut it from the DPW, or the Public Works budget. The intent was to create separate line items for these two theater company related expenses. So Mr. White is correct, and certainly we have no objection to these items being restored. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Now what we're going to do is, can I have a motion to sustain the appeal? Representative Garskoff, a second. Representative Schwartz. We're now going to discuss this item. This will not go to the public. This will stay within the body. Any discussion on the motion to sustain the appeal? Representative Schwartz.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Hiller. Mr. Hiller, where do these two lines now appear in the budget book? I know that they were taken out, and we were told that there was the intention to put it back in as two separate line items. I just want to make sure that when we put it back in, it goes to those two separate line items.
There are currently not specific line items, but clearly the controllers has set up accounts to identify those two accounts specific to the Fairfield Theater Company as sub-accounts within the utilities of Public Works. So in the final budget book, if this appeal were sustained, there would be separate line items in the budget book. But in the current year, they do not exist. We track these items as we do all buildings in town as far as the utility costs are concerned. But this would become a separate and distinct line item. And I might also add, the Board of Finance also asked that we track a separate line item for revenue related to the Fairfield Theater Company.
They are not in the budget book that we're looking at for next year, but in the final budget, they will appear as two separate lines items.
If this appeal were sustained, the final budget book would have them in there, yes.
As well as a line for the revenue item.
As well as line.
Thank you very much.
Any other members on this item? Okay, now we require a two-thirds vote on restoring this. So what was our number tonight, Ann? 48. So we're going to require, what do we need? 6. We need 32, right? We have 48. Yeah, so 32. Yeah, 32. Yeah, we're just gonna try a voice vote right now. I think it's all those in favor of sustaining the appeal, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, raise your hands. Representative Becker, Representative Jacob, Representative Mazoff, Representative Pontrelli, Representative DiMartino. Abstentions? Okay, the appeal is sustained. Item number 6 is to hear and consider an appeal by the Library Board of Trustees from the following vote of the Board of Finance pertaining to the library, 7010, budget to reduce library materials account number 56180 by $27,000. Let me make sure this is correct. $27,501. And the board, because I think it was incorrectly written, the requested amount, like I said, $27,501. The Board of Finance approved $629,900, just so it all adds up. We'll first hear, I believe, the Library Board of Trustees or
Librarian,
Town Librarian.
Karen Ronald.
Great.
Okay.
Karen, go ahead.
What we'd asked for was, we wanted a 5% increase in our library materials budget to cover the inflationary costs of materials. We do our research well in advance and figure out which groupings of materials will in fact increase. And we did in fact calculate it at $31,500. But we decided that on the request of Mike Tetro that we would honor his request to keep our budget in line. So we were asking for $27,000, knowing full well that in fact that would make, we'd have some serious decisions to make even with that increase. With the keeping the budget at the status quo, we're going to seriously have to look at cutting back on a lot of purchases for library materials. And I think you have to look at it from an entire community's perspective. We're buying for 60,000 people. And we know if you look in this room now, you don't read the same things, you don't have the same information needs as your own family members or your neighbors or people in the PTA or any groups you have. So what we're trying to do is really do some very specialized buying for our community. And if we do not receive this, we're going to have to consider cutting back very dramatically on how we purchase. So really what we wanted to do was just cover the inflationary costs of our materials.
We need to take one moment. Mr. Becker? No, right now. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Becker, District 1. Just procedurally here, I actually need to make an amendment to modify this. As the Board of Finance approved number is actually 629,900, which was a decrease of 27,501. So I'm making an amendment to change the Board of Finance approved number to 629,900.
Due to an error in the paperwork.
Yeah, there would actually, we'd have to change it in 2 locations. So my amendment would be to change the first number where it says to reduce library materials, account number 56180 by, that is actually now going to read $27,501. And then the other area is underneath Board of Finance approved. That is now going to read $629,900.
Second on that motion, Representative Schwartz. It is an amendment. Any discussion on this amendment? Any discussion among the public on this amendment? All those in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Representative Becker. I'm sorry. This is an amendment to just change the numbers so they're actually correct. Representative Becker, are you opposed to that? Okay. Because I'd be going nutty at that point. I don't even know what to... Okay, so all those in favor, everyone said aye. Those opposed again? Abstentions? Okay. Now we're talking about a new number. Now we're going to go to Mr. Bolito with the response.
As amended, my response is, we needed to find some savings in this budget to at least partially offset the necessary increases we made in areas such as pension, OPEB, Internal Service Fund, fund balance, things of that nature. If we didn't find some savings to offset that, we'd be looking at perhaps a 5% tax increase, which is something that we did not want to do. So what we did was we went to different departments and tried to find the smallest slice that we could take from several different departments so as not to impact service or, decimate what the department's trying to do. This cut was meant to put materials back to last year's level. Now, it was a tough one. All of us on the Board of Finance are big supporters of the library. A lot of citizens use the library. It was not something that was done lightly. However, it is a $4.5 million budget, and we felt that certainly the library could sustain that type of a cut without really badly impacting services. So we made cuts in several departments. We're not picking on the library, but again, we just needed to find some savings in the budget in order to keep the overall tax increase as low as we possibly could. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolito. We're now going to go to the make a motion to sustain the appeal. Representative Hopkins, a second, Representative Stamler. And we're now going to go, excuse me, to the body to discuss this item. Representative Garskoff.
Josh Garskoff, District 5. I'd like to urge everyone to support this. I hear Mr. Bolito. I know it was a tough budget and they were looking for things to trim. I don't think this does much for that cause, but I think it does a lot of damage to the library. I spend a lot of time at the library. I never take out a single book. I spend time there to get away from the house when I need to do some work on a weekend or when the house is crazy. And I sit there with my laptop at multiple libraries and I see the people coming through. It's kids, it's seniors, it's every single person. Every single person in this town is represented in some way. Every age range, every demographic type, everybody goes to the library. It's not kids only, it's not seniors only, it's everybody. It's not a lot of money. I just urge you to support it. That way they can get what they need to keep the library, having supplies and a lot of digital stuff. It's not just buying books anymore. It's buying digital materials as well. Thank you.
Any other members on the library? Representative Stamler.
And Stamler, District 5. To the library director, where is she sitting? No, the director herself. Could you itemize, just very briefly, a few of the things that this would mean? Are you cutting back on increased
Representative Stamler, you are
quantity?
asking through me to her.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
through you, Mr. Moderator, to the library director. Could we hear just very briefly a few of the items this cut would impact?
Sure.
Yeah, $27,000 actually is the equivalent of our entire budget for children's materials, mostly books at the main library. Now, I'm not threatening that. I'm not saying we're going to cut them out, but I'm going to tell you, because we specialize and we have over 60 different collections, when you divide that up between, $657,000, you're into very small budgets for very specialized groups of people. So I suspect if we do not get this increase, I'm going to have to consider not having summer reading this year, and that hurts everyone. And what we've done is we started to specialize with teen summer reading, adult summer reading, and children. And the reason we do it is to keep kids reading through the summer. So I'm going to have to look at that. Large print materials have increased too, and we know we have a very, very strong senior population. So I haven't decided what we do, but it will hurt. We have to live within our budget, whatever it becomes, and we have to make sure that we're doing the very best with our money. But it will, in fact, have a lot of impact on a lot of people.
Thank you. Any other members on this item? Representative Way.
Okay. Carol Way, District 10. I am in the library all the time, and I do take out a tremendous number of books. I use the computers there at times, all sorts of things. And I attend a wide array of programs that are put on there. And the staff is great, all of it. The Friends of the Library with their private fundraising, that's an important component. But I look at cuts that have been made in a variety of places, and you take a Thursday lunch for seniors that was a $2 lunch, and they're no longer able to do it because of cuts that have been made to the senior center. I think everywhere across the board here in the town, we have to be looking at cutbacks in terms of, diminished increases. And this is just one more place. There's private fundraising that is done through the Friends of the Library, and maybe this is one place where we need to be a little bit more active and all of us participate.
You know what, you can leave that on, actually. Might as well, yeah. Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the cut to the senior lunch program at the time was a cut in state funding, not in town funding, and at the moment that's been restored. All right, but I just want everybody clear that wasn't a cut in town funding to the senior center.
Any other members on this item? Yes, Representative Mirabile. Should be on.
Yes, hi, Nick Mirabile, District 9. I, too, am a fan of the library. I think everybody in this room is. I don't think anybody would stand up here and speak against our public libraries. But it is funny to me that every time a department head talks about making a cut, it's always directly to the children. It's always going to affect our children or our seniors. It seems that all the services in this town must be for children and seniors, and there's no services for me because it never seems that I'm going to get affected. So I just want us to be careful when we talk about cutting these budgets, and we hear that's going to affect the children, and we hear that's going to affect our seniors, that we think about these budgets and we think about where all the money is and where the cuts can be made. And I know that it's tough to make cuts, and no department head wants to make cuts. Nobody does. If you're the head of any department at any government agency or at any business, you want to have more money for your employees, and you want to have more money for all your services that your department provides. But we're in a situation in Fairfield where we need to make cuts. And we've got to make cuts across the board, and department heads are going to have to realize that we need to slow the spending down. And nobody wants to cut the library, and I don't want to see us lose any programs for our children or for our seniors. But if we can't start making cuts
Just ask
here,
everyone, it's just not applaud.
yeah, if we can't start making cuts here, and we're going to hear rhetoric about affecting the children and the seniors, we've got to be careful not to go down that path. We have a long night here talking about budgets, and let's focus on what's important here. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lee.
Representative Lee, District 10. I agree with a lot of what Representative Mirabile said. I will say this, though. My mother is a senior, and this is the only service that she uses. She doesn't play golf. She doesn't do anything. That's the only thing she does. I take her to the library 3 days a week. My mom can't go out and buy new books. She depends upon the library to have new books. Since she's been going to the library for 20 years, she's read a lot of books. And, for her 25% tax increase of last year, she would like to see new books. And, I agree with you. We can't talk about, but this is something, this particular issue, I think, does speak to our seniors, because this is one of the services that we can provide for them that saves them money. I can't drive Mom down, and she's not going to go down and to Westport and buy 5 new $30 novels a week. So, to her, that's a lot, that's a big deal. So I just need to speak up for Mom. Thanks.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Becker, District 1. Unfortunately, pretty soon, your mother and your mother's friends and everybody that we know that are seniors, and quite frankly, anyone who has kids, your kids are not going to be able to live in this town. Maybe they'll come from another town to read those books, I'm not sure, but they're not going to be driving from where they currently live. So they're not going to be able to afford to do that. And I think that what we're dealing with here is austerity. Because we are trying, and it is difficult, it is painful, and it hits all constituencies. It's not even just children and seniors, it's adults, it's everybody. Every single demographic is going to get hit somewhere in order to slow the rate of increase. At the end of the day, this is actually, while it may be an inflationary hit to the budget is not, as I understand it, or very minimally being reduced. And I think we need to take that into account in a lot of the discussions we're going to have tonight. But unfortunately, I appreciate it. It's difficult. I've got family that uses the library regular. I love the programs at the library, and about to have kids, going to want to bring them there too. And it's really difficult. But I look at a big picture here and realize that there have to be reductions somewhere. And this is only, in some words, 27,000, and it's only, which is one component, however, of a very large number that the Board of Finance actually has already taken to take into account shoring up our town. So it's part of a much bigger picture, and it's now being looked at as only one item. But this is, folks, this is austerity, and I think you're gonna see that and the need for it. And it is difficult and painful to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to make a general statement. We appreciate the public being here. There's no doubt about that. Anybody and everybody's welcome. I do ask you to retain clapping. It's too hard to follow the meeting, and we're going to have people applauding for what everybody says. Everyone here will get a round of applause. I just ask you to hold it, please. Any other members on this item? Representative Stamler?
Not to contribute to any rhetoric, but through you, Mr. Moderator, could I ask again for the library director to comment on whether any services currently available to those seeking employment who may have lost their employment are funded or would in part be funded by this amount?
Hi. Actually, we have services, we have programs. We've had 5,000 people who are seeking jobs come to the library over the last 3 years, and many of them actually have gotten jobs. We're very happy. Last month, we found out 7 people who'd attended some of our programs got jobs, so we're very proud of that. What happens with that is we don't just offer a program, we don't put in a lecturer or presenter and get them to, ramp up their resume. We buy materials to help them support their job search. So we are lucky. We've had a small grant from Rotary each year for $500 for people for job search materials, but we're probably investing about 10 times that much to respond to the community need for resources so they can take them home and hopefully get a job. The other thing we're doing now is we just started a financial literacy series. We got a large grant from the feds. It's $52,000, and part of that will go to materials, but we're going to have to sustain that collection. So over the years, this material does not become stale and is always valuable. So there is a collection component to it, and it would come out of library materials.
Any other members? Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on this item, which is the motion to sustain the appeal. An affirmative vote means you will put the money back in. We need a 2/3 vote. We're going to do a roll call vote. So saying aye, or yes, aye, means you are restoring the money. Yep.
David Becker? Michael Hurley? Gaylord Meyer? Carolyn Richmond? Eric Sundman? Peter Ambrose? John Matola? Jeffrey Steele?
No.
Keith Varian? Ed Bateson? Tom Conley? Hank Ferentz? David McKenzie? Mary McCullough? Heather Dean? Joseph DiMartino? Arthur Hugg? Amy Mezoff? Joe Palmer? Joshua Garskoff? Chris McAleese? Bruce May? Ann Stamler? Chris Brogan? Leonora Campbell? Julie Gottlieb? Sheila Marmion? Jay Wolk? Jennifer Hochberg? Kevin Hopkins? Eric Newman? Mark Patton? Hal Schwartz? Catherine Braun? Dana Carey? Alan Marks? Tom McCarthy? Jeff Stopa? Bill D'Amica? Joe Fellner? Ellen Jacob? Nick Marabla? Carol Pontrelli? Lee Hannum? Kenneth Lee? Bruce Ryan? Carol Way? David Weber?
Yeah. You better come through. The motion to sustain fails, 17 yes, 31 no. Paul, let me just write this down with you here. So we're talking, so 247-756, 756-313.
593, I'm sorry.
So you're saying 247-756-593? Okay, and then this number,
373-382-674.
what is this number? Oh, 373. So this is 2 as well?
This just was 39,000, so it becomes 382,
Oh, 382.
694, 251,
Yep, 986.
96.
And this is due to the change here,
Yes.
right? Okay, so 382, 986 there, and then this number, 756, right, yep, let me just put it.
1,000.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to move to item number 7, which is to consider and discuss, including RTM committee reports and comments from the public, proposed appropriations in the amount, let's make sure I get this right, $273,382,694 for the fiscal. I was corrected. We're going to have to probably make a motion to amend that then, too. Okay, let me just read through it here. For the fiscal year of July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013, as recommended by the Board of Finance, so I'm going to read the old version first, for any lawful purpose. The total proposed budget as approved by the Board of Finance is as follows. I will remind you, these are incorrect numbers. We have to make a motion to amend them. I have to read them as is. Gross budget, $273,343,694. Less estimated receipts of $25626,101, net budget of $247,717,593, plus reserve for uncollected $4,229,790. Amount to be raised by taxation $251,947,383. Again, these are the old numbers. This budget was referred to all standing committees. I am going to ask for a motion to amend these numbers to the numbers I'll provide you. Representative Schwartz, I'm going to give you these numbers. Paul, this is solely because of...
39,000,
Yes, the 39,000.
the 39,000 that was added to the public works for the utilities.
Right. Okay. Yep. You got it? Hal Schwartz, you have a motion?
I do, Mr. Moderator. I would like to amend the motion to increase the $39,000 that we added previously. So according to the numbers that I have, the gross budget number now would be $273,382,694, less estimated receipts of $25,626,101, for a net budget of $247,756,593, plus the reserve for uncollected taxes of $4,229,790, for an amount to be raised by taxation of $251,986,383.
Well done. Is there a second to that motion, Representative Bateson? Is there any discussion on the amended numbers, which again is just a simple clarification, adding back in the numbers restored to the Public Works? Any discussion on the amendment? Members of the public? We're now going to vote on the amended numbers. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The amendment is approved, and now we have new numbers. Would anyone like me to read them once more? Or does everybody have them? Okay. That's fine. The budget was referred, like I said, to all standing committees. There was no action other than discussion at committees. I'm going to open this up now. Generally, at this point, all those who intend to make motions to reduce the budget will make those intentions known here tonight. Did you have a motion earlier? No? Okay. Okay, Mr. Hurley?
Michael Hurley, District 1. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Fiscal Officer Paul Hiller. Question 1, what is the current increase in spending, and what does that translate into a tax rate if it was approved tonight?
Mr. Hiller.
Doing some quick math in my head here. The current increase in spending over the current year's budget would be $10,308,752.
Could we have that on a percentage basis?
Sorry?
Percentage basis?
Is that?
The increase on a percentage basis.
The increase on a percentage basis, I didn't figure out with the 39,000 added, but it would be fractionally over. We were at 3.9%. We can figure it out. It would obviously be fractionally over 3.9% as a result of the addition of the 39,000. 3.918, 3.92.
Okay. And if you had to declare a tax rate based upon that 3.92 increase, what would that tax increase be?
We estimated at the current time that the tax rate would be up 1.03 mils to 23.50 mils.
And what would that be on a percentage basis, increase of year over year?
4.58%.
And why is there, if I may ask another question, such a pretty large disparity between the spending increase and the effective tax rate if the spending proposal was approved by this body?
There is a reduction in outside revenues. If you look at the manner in which the tax rate is to be generated, there is at the beginning of the budget book, there is an estimate in the reduction. There is a reduction in the amount of spending, amount of outside revenue to be retrieved. It is down, let me get my budget book for 1 second. We estimate a reduction of just under $700,000 in outside revenue, other than taxation. These are all the other numerous accounts that we generate revenue. That's the primary reason.
Okay, now, just in the eyes of the average, if you could, Fairfield taxpayer, what would a 4.58% increase mean in dollar value?
We haven't figured, we haven't generated a figure which is specific to the average taxpayer or the average home. I can tell you this, that based on the current grand list, the 1/100th of a mil, in other words, changing from 1/100th of a mil does two things. First off, it would only lower the tax increase by approximately 0.04%. And furthermore, that would equate to a reduction in spending of approximately $107,000 for 1/100th of a mil.
Okay. So it wouldn't be possible to give this body and the number of people here in the public just a general idea for an average? I mean, no one's going to hold exactly to that number, but would you say it would be the average taxpayer would see a
I don't have from the assessor's office what the average assessment is for a residential property.
I really ask members of the public to just be silent, please. I will give you an opportunity to speak, but for this purpose of getting this done, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hiller.
Thank you.
Representative Ambrose?
Through Mr. Moderator to Mr. Hiller. Mr. Hiller, you estimated a $700,000 less in tax revenues that we were taking in. Over the last several months, with the issues going on with appeals, tax appeals, et cetera, has that figure changed? Has that increased, that $700,000 figure, and how will that affect us going forward?
The $700,000 really is not impacted at all by the various tax appeals that are pending before the Superior Court. The Board of Assessment Appeals has recently concluded their action and has reduced the grand list by in excess of $8 million for the 2011 grand list. As this body is aware, there are several tax appeals pending before the Superior Court in Connecticut in which we are defending our positions. But the $700,000 is not impacted by that number. There is a reserve, as you can see, for what we term uncollected taxes, in which some of the anticipated actions by the Superior Court are anticipated.
Thank you.
Representative Hurley?
Thank you. Michael Hurley, District 1. Through you, Mr. Moderator, back to Chief Fiscal Officer Hiller. Getting back to the tax rate of 4.58, my understanding is correct, if you had a house that was valued at $600,000, the assessed value would be 70% of that, $420,000? And what would be the increase, roughly, for someone whose house is valued at $600,000 and assessed at $420,000?
A $600,000 market value on the house.
Market value assessed at, yeah, 70%, which would be $420,000, right?
That would be $420,000 assessment. Okay. The increase on that would be the 1.03 mils. Be roughly $432.
Great. Thank you.
I'm going to ask if there are any other members at this point who want to make any other general statements. I will be asking for proposed cuts. Representative Becker? A caucus is called by the majority leader. It's a 10-minute caucus. Same location as before. Convene. We're back to item number 7, and at this point, as I mentioned, tonight is the time. Not only will the public speak, we will get to you, is all intentions to make motions to reduce the budget. The annual meeting on May 7th should be made now. I invite you to make them now, if there are any. And I do want to say this is certainly a courtesy to members and to departments here, but the reality is once next Monday comes, nobody's necessarily held to anything. But I think these are intentions that are being made right now, and we're going to hear them out if there are any proposals. So I'll now open up to the floor, and Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Hal Schwartz, District 7. At this time, I am looking to cut about a total of $805,000. And these would come from the 3 lines of the budget that the Board of Finance put back into the pension fund. The total dollars that they put back in at their meeting after the actuarial and the pension board passed the number on to the town. So I am looking at this. It is in the neighborhood of about a little over $800,000. Once we get all the final lines and all the numbers finalized, if I do go forward with this cut next week, I will have those numbers for you. But right now, I am looking at $800,000.
So we just heard $805,000, a proposal for the Board of Ed to put back in the Board of Finance, the pension fund. Okay. We're going to, before we discuss every item here, I just want to lay them out, and then I can open it up. Other members. Representative Becker. Sorry, I misheard that.
Enough for down there? Oh, keep one back here for me. Keep one for me. Yeah. Michael, if you could make sure the press gets copies first in here. So does all members, if you don't have one, or ex officios, let us know. For anybody who doesn't get one of them, we'll request to get a copy posted to the website tomorrow. Hopefully the First Selectman can accommodate that. Or Mr. Hiller. Can we accommodate getting a copy of this up on the website? There's a lot of people in the public that won't have a copy. So, or the town clerk, there you go. Town clerk will get it up on the website. Thank you. You ready for me?
Yes, and I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, no problem. All right, David Becker, District 1. What we have handed out is a very broad proposal for a 2% reduction off the top of every department in town. There are a few items where there are exceptions, and those are notated on the RTM notes area. Those are largely in, for instance, the finance department, where we adjusted the $500,000 going into the town general fund, which is a ratings agency recommendation. So we have taken that out, and then we took the 2% on what was left. The same goes for any of the liability protections accounts that are sitting in the human resources budget. We also did the same thing there. There are a couple of areas like hydrant and water, streetlights, where we didn't do that either. So the goal here, we didn't touch pension, debt service, any of that within this proposal. So those are the core baselines that would risk, quite frankly, our town's rating. So we left those intact within this proposal. And what this is, we believe, is a starting point for a conversation that this community needs to have as to what is an acceptable increase and what that may look like. And there are many ways to get there. Some of these departments could potentially be larger, some smaller. But this is what it looks like if everybody across the board was evenly reduced at this point. And again, I said this earlier regarding austerity. In a lot of ways, this is what austerity looks like. It is painful, it is strong. But if we want to ensure that our tax rate, I believe the numbers I heard before on a approximately $700,000 house are well over 400. I believe that number even could go higher once we get some of these revenue projections really come in. So we're looking at some significant increases that are pushing people out of this town, and something needs to be done. So this is a starting point. This is barely even half of what has already been asked for in the increases. And in nowhere in here does this risk our AAA rating. Quite frankly, I think somebody really could argue that continuing the escalation of expenditures as we have is actually going to be a greater detriment in the long run to that rating. When they figure out that the people in this town at some point, if not now, quite clearly very soon, can't even afford to pay these and are not going to be willing to pay the types of increases in budgets and taxes that we've levied on them. So, thank you. And
Can I ask you to, again, clarify 2% cut on every department except for which ones? Can you just clarify?
There are a few areas and it's in the RTM notes, which is the far right column. Almost everywhere you see 2%, but if you see something different, there's a reason for it. You'll either see zeroed because it's a zero budget, so, and I'm not talking zero increase. I'm talking, for instance, land acquisition was zeroed out, so there are a couple of places that were zeroed. So there's simply no money to take. If you go to human resources, it says 2%/7246690. Essentially, if you take the Human Resources Department budget, which is approximately $7.9 million as an example, $7.2 million of that, it doesn't go to the day-to-day running of the department, it goes to insurance to protect our town. So we felt that if you took things like insurance policies away, for instance, the ratings agencies may say, well, then where are you going to take it if you have a claim? Well, if somebody sues us, we're going to take it from the general fund if we don't have insurance to protect ourselves. So you wouldn't want to touch areas like that. So what I did was I took all of those core necessities. This isn't about the day-to-day running, but this is about protecting our AAA rating. I took those out, and I went 2% off of the actual day-to-day running of that department. So I treated it essentially like every other department, because if you took HR as an example, one could argue that its day-to-day is one budget and the liability is another. I did the same thing when working out that 2% number for everybody in the finance department. The finance department this year, typically it is just running the finance department, but this year there was $1 million that was placed in to go directly in towards protecting the general fund. It now sits at $500,000. So I deducted that $500,000, because you wouldn't want to say we're going to do $500,000 to protect for the ratings agencies, but we're going to take 2% off of that. So I protected in these numbers those things which through all of the budget discussions are truly required in order to ensure that we don't risk our AAA rating. There is one area where there was no reduction, and that was the nonprofits. There is a belief that the nonprofits actually, and not everyone universally shares this on this body, but it seems as though between both parties there seemed to be some consensus here at this point that those nonprofits in a lot of ways actually save the money actually for the town. Pilot House is an example. We were told we could be looking at $2 to $3 million if we took $15,000 away. So those are the types of areas where maybe you don't want to take any money because it could really cost you quite a bit more. I believe that answers your question.
At this point, instead of discussing that, are there any other proposals of intended cuts or intentions of proposed cuts among this body? Can you turn it to ESPN for a second? Any other members? Representative McCarthy?
This proposal actually limits the amount of the increase from 3.9% to 2.2%. Quite honestly, I wish we had a flat budget year to year, but as David pointed out, we have concerns about the amount of reserves we have to put aside to maintain the town's AAA rating. And we have concerns about, well, we know for a fact we have a debt service that's $1 million higher this year than it was last year. So I'm going to support this proposal. I believe 2% is the right number. I think that's what we can afford to pay. If every member of this body doesn't believe that taxes have already risen to the point where they represent a burden for many, many of our constituents, and we have our heads buried in the sand, we've got to come at this from a different angle. We've got to push this down to department heads and say, you've got to work smarter, not harder. And you're going to have to identify some things that you're no longer going to be able to do because the cost of doing them exceeds what the taxpayers have the ability to pay. I think 2% is the right number, and I will support this.
Mr. Becker, I just want to ask you to clarify one thing. Again, 2%, the number, so everyone here knows, is it 2% cut from what is standing now, or are you looking at 2% increase from last year? Just so everyone's clear on that.
Yeah, this is if you take the department's budget as it is before this body. So if the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance have made any, any adjustments, the budget as it is in that book right now for this year proposed. Yeah. If you take the
As
proposed
proposed before
budget
this- to
by
this body right
department in front of us right now, it takes 2% right off the very top of it. Not a 2%
As-
increase. It has nothing to do with last year's.
right.
It's this year's budget before us right now, after any adjustments that have taken place.
Okay. As
What we're being asked to vote
described
on.
in detail in your handout.
Yes.
Clarification, point of clarification.
Correct. Fiscal year 13, which is the budget that we're voting on this year.
Representative Mottola.
John Mottola, District 2, through you, Mr. Steele. I don't know if the town attorney can answer this question. It's my understanding that we can't just have general 2% cuts from each department, that the RTM member who's proposing these needs to go line item through line item in each department to indicate how he gets to the numbers on this sheet. Is that, can I ask that
You
question
can
for
ask
you?
through me to the town attorney.
My name is Stanton Lesser. I'm the town attorney. In answer to your question, Representative Mottola, I don't believe that that's a proper form to make cuts to the budget. You cannot do it department by department. I believe that state statute and more importantly our town charter requires that any cuts made by this body to the budget be line item by line item.
Mr. Mottola, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So with that, I would, and I guess the question is going to be to the representative who made this, or whoever wants to speak to it, is that the, will you tonight be standing up and going through each department line item by line item, designating where you're getting these cuts, or is that going to be something for next Monday's meeting? And that's all I have to ask.
Is that a question to?
Well, I think it's a question through you, Mr. Steele, to, I guess it would be Representative Becker.
Okay. Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Becker, District 1. I strongly disagree with what you have laid forward here. And quite frankly, I think based on previous history in this body with this majority party in this chamber over the course of the past 2 terms from your predecessor and now you, that this majority needs its own counsel and that you are not, quite frankly, acting in the best interest of this RTM with that opinion. And I believe you are defending, quite frankly, as lawyers do in this situation. I can produce an opinion that says one thing, and I can produce an opinion that says another. And I don't think that your opinion, I think it's basically being manufactured to go against what we want to do. What you've known for now 2 weeks since I asked my initial opinion, which noted that we could do this, now notes that we can't, rests very vaguely on loose concepts. I think the former assistant town attorney very clearly noted that the RTM is actually barely mentioned within state statutes, and it's actually a very vague point that points back to our charter, and the interpretation of our charter vaguely actually notes the procedures here. The other boards have followed multiple procedures because it's actually vague when it comes to them. And I believe that this body has the ability to do that. And, I think we have a problem here because you've obviously got your opinion, but you work for the first selectman. And this has been a problem historically on this body, consistently.
First of all, Mr. Becker, I'm appointed by the first selectman, but I work for you, and I work for the rest of the people on this board. And it's my opinion, and if you'd like, I'll give you the basis of my opinion. The first memo that was issued by Eileen Kennelly, I took a look at, my name is on it. It was based on what I thought was a question, simply, can you make a bottom line cut or do we do budgets department by department? And we do budgets department by department. But if you read the memo a little more closely, it does talk about within a department budget, it's got to be line by line. Yesterday, I was asked to be more definitive about it. I did some research. I looked at the charter. It's very clear to me from the charter that we do line-by-line budgeting. And I'll be happy to give you my reasoning if you'd like.
I've seen your memo. And again, I disagree with your memo. And I believe that a competing opinion can just as easily be written. And I've asked people to look at this. I've looked at this myself. There's been a lot of people who have gone through the procedures. The procedures are very vague, and I believe that we as a body are allowed to do this.
The procedures aren't so vague, Mr. Becker, if you look at them.
I
Would you like me to-
disagree. So why don't we ask,
elaborate?
why don't we ask this question at this point? May I, Mr. Moderator? If a department is cut directly across the top, and you have an opinion that says that we can't do that, what happens? What happens if we say we disagree and we do it anyways?
Then you could wind up with an invalid budget.
And what would happen then if, and who would determine if it's invalid, and what would happen at that stage?
I don't know what would happen, quite frankly, because I don't think it's ever happened. And let me just elaborate a little bit why I think that you have to do line by line. If you look at the charter does lay out a specific procedure for the budget. It starts with the department heads. They present to the first selectman, the Board of Selectmen. It then goes to the Board of Finance, and the Board of Finance then sends it to this body. It's pretty specific. The Board of Finance, under state statute, is the budgetary authority for the town of Fairfield. Not this body, not the Board of Selectmen. It's the Board of Finance. They determine the form and content of the budget under our charter. That's been done. It's a line item budget. You're receiving it as a line item budget. And if you do anything other than cut by line items, I think what you do is you wind up with chaos in the budget because you don't know how the reallocations are made. You've asked that 2% be cut from every budget, correct?
That is a proposal on hand.
Who makes the allocation?
It's my understanding the department head.
There's no provision.
Just like they're allowed to reallocate through the year. That's exactly what they do.
That has to go to the Board of Finance.
Are they coming to the Board of Finance throughout the year when they do that? They do it as a cleanup at the end of the year. So they
But-
make the determination throughout the year.
But the charter says it has to go, you cannot expend more for a particular purpose unless it's approved by the Board of Finance.
So are the department heads violating the charter under the direction of the first selectman? Because that's exactly what's happening here. Which is
However-
why we believe that the department heads, as they do throughout the year, are the best ones to make that determination.
That's not what the charter provides.
And we believe that the charter does. So, okay, I am done with my answers. Obviously, we will have to delay my position on this until next week. But, yeah, I think you know how I believe it should be laid out. Thank you.
Clearly, we're at a bit of an impasse in terms of what the final decision or consensus is. However, proposed cuts have been made by department, and as of right now, that is what's on the table until determined later what the final course is that we take. But for right now, we're going to move on, and I'm going to ask if there are any other proposals. Representative Jacob? Was there, I want to first see if there are any other proposals. I want to finish that. Are there any other proposed cuts beyond what is now an argument or a unclear consensus? Any other proposals? Okay. I'm fine now. We can open this up and discuss what was just mentioned. We can discuss other elements. It's up to you guys. Representative Jacob. I do want to hear the public speak. I want us to all be very aware that the public can speak tonight.
Ellen Jacob, District 9, and I was just going to bring that up. I really want to hear from the public. We're talking about shared sacrifice. We are doing it mostly, at least from my point of view, for the sake of the public and the town and the folks paying the bills and the taxpayers. We need to hear from you. If I had my druthers, I think I would also want a 0% increase, because I know I've been living with one for a couple of years now. I believe many people in our town are as well, and have taken cuts in their living disposable income. We're having to pay for higher grocery bills, and we have our insurance prices raised every few months, and just as our town does. And we sort of grin and bear it and march on and pay our taxes. I think we need to hear from you, and that is what I have to say
Okay.
now.
And we will certainly get to them, as I said. Representative Schwartz had his hand up.
Okay, Hal Schwartz, District 7. Moving forward with the proposed cut that I have in my hand, I know how long it took me to put together the cut that I proposed. Obviously, this has been, some time has been taken, and I've been looking at it for 5 minutes. So I would ask through you, Mr. Moderator, to the maker of this proposed cut to explain it to us, at least the adjustment, BOS, BOF, RTM proposal, budget estimate, budget adjustment, because I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at, because just sitting down real quick right now, I don't know where the number started and where the number ends. So if I could get a little bit of clarification so I understand what it is I'm looking at, I would appreciate it.
Representative Becker, and again, I'm going to be, to some degree, conscious of the time that this whole process will take, so we have the public speak.
So can you just clarify, because I think it seems pretty cut and dry here, but I'll walk you through let's walk you through all the column by column. So it's broken out just like the budget. In fact, this is essentially, this is an Excel sheet that was taken directly out of the electronic version of the budget. So I tried to put this in a format that members could take their budget book and find an almost identical page and work from there as well. So obviously you have the department number and the department name. You have your fiscal year 09 actual, your fiscal year 11 actual. Now fiscal year 12 is 2011 into 2012, which is the year we're in right now. And that shows the amount that the budget was approved by this body last year. So in the First Selectman's office, as an example, that's $561,291. That was last year's budget. The next line is the fiscal year 13 department request. And then you have the fiscal year 13 recommendation if there were any adjustments by the First Selectman. In this particular case, there were not. And the next line shows the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget, and then the percentage. So for instance, 561,291 to 574,293 is an increase of $13,002, or 2.32%. This is all currently what's in the budget book. The next set of lines are new, and they're being placed on this spreadsheet. I went to the budget control document that everyone has received and should be posted onto the town's website that shows the adjustments by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So for instance, there's a Board of Selectmen adjustment of a decrease of $1,500 in the First Selectman's office budget. There was no adjustment by the Board of Finance. The next column is the RTM proposed reduction, which is $11,456, which creates a new budget of $561,337. And that shows an increase of $46 year over year, or a 0.01% increase to the First Selectman's budget from last year to this year. And that same thing can be applied to every single department. And just so everybody understands the way I calculated the 2%, I took the budget as it, again, I took the budget as it is before us. So you take the original budget that was proposed in those books, and you take the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance adjustments, be it up or down, and you get the number that we are actually supposed to be voting on here. And I took 2% off of that. So if a department had already been decreased some, we didn't then take 2 more percent. We took 2% off of what the yeah, exactly, the original. Okay.
Representative Schwartz?
Yeah, one question follow-up. So if I understand this, basically what this boils down to is a total budget reduction, and the bottom line is $4,458,461. That's the right line, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And if I may, that is correct. It is still an increase of $5.8 million and 2.21% over last year's budget. So after all of this, it's still there. Thank you.
Representative Sundman, I saw you with your hand earlier. Would you like to come up? Representative Becker, are there others? David, are there others? Or no? 'Cause I don't.
What? Eric Sundman, RTM District 1. I'm not supporting anything because there's another 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that is that our assessments in District 1 stand uncorrected, and we are not going to spend another dollar on any taxes in this town. I'm not voting for anything until this issue's been resolved. And there's a lot of people sitting here tonight that are spending $10,000, $15,000 overnight for assessments on their properties, which are unjustified. You know, you can't tell us that we're going to be supporting anything like this for these people. It's insane. We want to get to the bottom of the assessment issue. You know, I mean, we've met with the first selectman who's helped us out tremendously, except we needed to go another step further. And there's many people sitting here tonight that have to come up with another $10,000 or $15,000 per year for wrong numbers, and now we're going to give them a 4% increase? No way. Sorry.
Representative Marmion. Yeah, everyone leave it on. Just.
Okay. Am I?
Yeah,
I'm on
just
now.
speak
Okay.
into it, yeah.
Sheila Marmion, District 6. You know, irregardless of what the town attorney says in terms of Sheila Marmion, District 6, the issue of whether or not you look at the budget and cut by department or by line item, from my perspective, there's a need for transparency. I need to have a better understanding of what your rationale is for the 2% cut. I need to go line item by line item because I need to understand what the true impact of these cuts are. And I think that's what we owe to the people of this town. Let's understand what the impact of these cuts are. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yes. I've asked the public not to comment, or else I'm going to have to limit your comments because you're making them now. Comments are going to be timed later on anyway, so you're actually dipping into your time. I please ask you not to make comments. There are people on both sides of this. Just please hold your comments. Representative Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alan Marks, District 8.
First of all, I just want to say that I'm sure there's no one in this room that doesn't want as low a tax increase as possible. We're all working towards that. For me, it's really a practical issue of what the result of these cuts is going to be. So through you, Mr. Moderator, I guess to Representative Becker, just highlighting a couple of lines here. Let's see. There is a almost $300,000 reduction to the fire department and police departments, and a almost $3 million reduction to the Board of Ed. I guess I'm just wondering what what do you believe the effect will be of those cuts? How will they be handled by those departments specifically?
Representative Becker?
As I stated in the beginning, I believe that this is a conversation about where this budget ultimately should go. This is obviously, the 2% is a very simple way of spreading that throughout all of town government. And on these individual locations, for instance, you brought up, I believe it was police, fire, and Board of Ed. I think we are ultimately going to have a conversation of certainly, as we have in the past, of all departments, not just those three, but levels of service in this town. And if we want more money to be in the police department, for instance, if that's too deep of a cut for the police department, then it's got to come from somewhere. And I think that one of the biggest problems that I have found here as I look at this budget, and this is no fault of the department heads. I put this right at the very top of the administration. This is yet another carryover budget that doesn't look at finding synergies between the departments, doesn't find synergy between the Board of Ed and the town. There are areas that, quite frankly, could probably go much deeper than this. And if we maybe had some of those conversations and we operated this town more efficiently, perhaps we wouldn't have to do some of those other reductions. So I'm putting this out, and I believe that this is a conversation that needs to be had. And it's a real problem, and it's put us into this spot. We shouldn't even be here. This budget should have never even come in at 10.3.
Okay.
And that's it.
Representative Marks, are you?
Yeah, so I understand how you got to the numbers, and I understand why you have made these cuts. I guess I'm going to be asked to vote on cuts to, some very large cuts to some very important areas, and for me to be able to make those cuts, I need to know what the effect is going to be of a $300,000 cut on our police department, our fire department, $3 million on the Board of Ed. I need to know how that will affect them. So I guess that's what I'm asking.
I'm going to go to Representative Mazoff, who was...
Yeah, am I?
Oh.
No, I mean,
You can respond briefly. And
yeah,
then
I
go to-
can't directly answer that question.
Okay.
I don't believe any of us can, but what we can answer is that we cannot sustain the level of increase that we are dealing with at this time, and that is what we are asking to
Okay.
reduce.
That's
and there
fine.
are many ways to get there.
Representative Mazoff.
Just through you, Mr. Moderator, Amy Mezoff, District 4. I want to call your attention to a memo to Jeff Steele, moderator of the RTM, that was sent to all members of the RTM, I assume, from Stanton Lesser and Eileen Kennelly on April 10th. A very specific question was asked. And the conclusion of this memo, the last paragraph says, we believe that the only possible conclusion is that the amendments to the cut the town budget must be made by department. I can't help but feel a sense of resentment that we haven't worked hard enough in coming up with the proposal that we came up with. That nothing could be further from the truth. I can't believe that a town attorney would provide a legal opinion, and then the night we're discussing it, come up with a different legal opinion. I don't think we should even pursue any more discussion about the budget until we have a real legal opinion from an outside party that can interpret our charter, because that means that what we have now is we have a bad process. If we start with a bad process, we're never going to come to any kind of an agreement. Thank you.
Representative Garskoff?
Josh Garskoff, District 5. We do have a lot of department heads here, and I think the next order of business, in my opinion, is to ask them what these cuts would do. Is the superintendent here?
Yeah. This will conceivably go until midnight. I want to hear the
Well,
public.
I agree, it may go late, but I don't think we can skip over it either. This isn't, I know it's just a starting conversation, I respect that, but the conversation is about cutting budgets, and I think, I'm not asking to go through every one, but I'd like to hit some of them and find out what the effect will be. I'm not looking to be here all night either, it's not my goal, but I think this is the next order of business. If we're going to talk about the budget, we've got to talk about the budget. Obviously, Mr. Becker doesn't know the impact, I don't expect him to, but there are people in the room who do. I mean, that's why they're here, that's why we're here.
You're right. How many departments are you looking to ask about? I
Well,
want to understand. I want to gauge this so we
I
can hear
think,
from the
I
public.
think three. The three, assuming that they're here, and I think they are, will be Board of Ed, Police, and Fire. And Public Works probably should be there too, 4.
There's the issue that they may not be prepared right now, and they will have the opportunity next Monday as well. Next Monday is a time to ask the questions and debate and vote as well. Not that tonight is not, but tonight is a time to discuss, but also hear from the public, because they are not going to be heard from next Monday.
Okay, so
I don't
I-
want to cut that out, but I also understand your question.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we should discuss that next week and we should let the public have tonight, is that what you're saying?
I think right now that we have a week until obviously
Agreed.
next Monday,
Agreed.
to sift through all this. I think we can discuss and hear from the departments next Monday for efficiency purposes.
Okay.
Let's discuss among this body right now.
Okay.
Do our inquiries over the next 7 days as we see fit and as would be appropriate.
Okay.
And then certainly next Monday, we can take all our time in the world. But if we
Well-
cut out the public tonight,
No, I'm not
that's
looking to
our
cut out
only
the public.
opportunity.
All right, so here's what I would say to you, through you, Mr. Moderators, can we ask that the department heads come to discuss this next Monday
think
and
that's-
give us a
that's a-
presentation to the extent they're able as to what these cuts would mean to
if
them?
you're in a way asking ahead of time to
Yes.
have them respond to
Yes.
some of these on Monday,
Yes.
that is fine.
Thank you.
Yes, point of information. Yes. Uh-huh. You're right. We're in a quandary right now. Yes, Kay? Uh-huh. Yep.
Would we be expected to convey our questions of the department heads to them between now and next Monday? I thought I understood that from what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Or wait and have the full discussion next Monday?
Well, the question is already out there to the 3 department heads. I think they were implied, the 4 department heads. They were implied right now that those questions are out there. Therefore, over the next 7 days, I would figure all those department heads will analyze their budget and decide how they will respond on Monday, whether it's a department cut or a line-by-line cut. Now, we can't decide right here and now if it's a line item cut. Therefore, it has to be, as of right now, the umbrella department cut. It's the only way we can move on. And therefore, they will have to respond to what that will do to their department. If he or she chooses to do so by line item, that will hopefully be determined by then. And to Representative Mezov's point, we're going to have some sort of written decision on this by next Monday. That's the only way we can resolve this. We're going to have a written decision with hopefully some sort of background and precedents all written up for us to move forward on this, or else we'll at a logjam. But I think for right now, for this meeting, we need to look at what was proposed by department, because that's all we have now, and that's all we can base it on, and go from there. the questions are out there. The department heads know they're on alert to respond to these proposed cuts, and so I would assume they're going to work hard to respond to them. Representative Richmond. I will remind you we're in uncharted waters, so I'm doing my best.
Carolyn Richmond, District 1. It seems kind of ironic that we're having this discussion, and many of us stood in line today and wrote out a very large check because this was the 4th installment of taxes due to the town. So I think everybody is very aware of what's going on with taxes. We're almost beyond being rational. We've tried to be logical, but as Representative Becker said, this is a time for austerity. We've already taken care of the low-hanging fruit. We've done all the easy stuff. What we do now is going to hurt. It's going to hurt everybody. But it's hurting our taxpayers now. I've had people tell me, I'm going to rent out a room in my home so I can stay in my home. I'm not replacing my hearing aids because I'm paying taxes right now. I've got to choose between buying groceries or buying my prescriptions. They're making hard choices. They haven't been getting increases. Everybody knows what's been going on here since 2008. Yes, it is hard, and there's nothing rational about, can you afford to lower it $100,000? We have got to do something in this town. Our people cannot continue paying these high taxes. We have to be responsible in our spending. It's going to be hard. It's going to be cuts. But the problem is we have got to get over this not my project syndrome. Every department is going to feel the hurt. Departments that you really, really don't think can even go any farther. But this is reality. This is real life. People have to make cuts. And if we want this town to survive with a broad diversity of people, then we have to take a stand right now. I understand that it's going to be hard when you start looking at 2%. It's easy to throw around numbers. Percentages are very easy. Then you look at the dollars, and you go, where am I going to get these dollars from? It's not going to be easy. It's going to mean a cut in personnel. It's going to mean a cut in services. But we have to remember that as a town, we all have to share in this. I really urge us to think about, I know it's not going to be an easy choice, and you want to feel like I have a logical reason of why I'm going to cut the Board of Education or why I'm going to cut Public Works. It's nothing logical about it. It's just that we cannot afford it. We're going to have to live within our means, and I urge you to really rethink the way you look at everything, because I think our townspeople need some help. Thank you.
Representative Becker? I'm sorry. I'm looking at, yes, Representative Bateson.
Ed Bateson, District 3. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's not that I don't care what we all think as a body. There's two proposals out there right now, if I'm not mistaken. If there's any motion, I really want to get to the public, because that's why I'm here tonight. I want to hear what they think. There's two proposals out there. I really want to hear what they have to think. And, you know, when it gets to, I think it was Mr. Garskoff's point, the department heads are going to have until next week to disseminate this information, and I think we can wait until then, but I really want to hear what the public thinks. So if you need a motion or a suspension of the rules so we can go there.
Make a sense of the body, if you want to see if this body wants to move it to the
I'll make a
public,
sense of the body resolution that we go immediately to public comment.
A second on Representative DiMartino. We're going to make right now a motion on the floor to move it to the public. Well, actually, not a motion, sense of the body. All those in favor of moving this to the public, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, raise your hand. That doesn't mean it won't come back to us. We're now going to go to the public. Now, to do this, the best thing is to have, I don't know how many of you want to speak. I don't know if all of you or a portion of you, but we're going to line up along the wall to here. Now, I have to time you because it's the only way we'll get through this. So I'm going to leave a 2-minute time limit per person, and you cannot take it personally when I cut you off midstream, or I'll give you a couple seconds warning, but I have to do it with everybody, and I'm going to do it equally. Okay? And also, please state your name when you come up to the microphone, and then I will begin the timer. I'm sorry? And stand in front of the door and speak clearly, and you can pass the mic to the next person. We'll make this as orderly as possible, but I have to put a time limit, and that's that. Please come on up.
Sure. Absolutely. Bob McGuffey, live on Mayweed Road here in Fairfield. And I haven't heard any cuts tonight. What I heard is a $5 million increase. So we haven't even talked about cuts. If we went back to last year's budget, we'd be fine. That's first of all. So I'm for any cuts. I think that's what the department heads are for. They can make the decisions. Projections I've seen from those working the numbers are there could be a $56 million deficit in 5 years if we didn't raise any taxes. All I see is taxes increasing. Traditionally, people who go into public and civil service are stepping up to make the government function and are working for the taxpayers. I see today the taxpayers are working for the public service unions on a municipal, state, and national level. We all know what's going on. Clearly, more than we can afford has been promised to the unions by politicians whose campaigns they've either financed or those who have been cowered into just going along. Too much has been baked into these contracts. We need to open them up, get out of defined benefit pensions, onto 401ks, get a much greater contribution toward their own health care, for starters, and stop counting overtime in public pension calculations. We've created a privileged class out of those of our neighbors who are supposed to be doing the people's business. We've clearly proved the old Thatcherism here, that eventually you run out of other people's money, and we've done it. We are on the doorstep of bankruptcy, folks, at every level of our society. And those of us out here are looking for those of you in there to stand up, push back, and return our government to a sound fiscal footing before it's truly too late.
Thank you.
So,
yes. Yeah, no, the public can queue up, and we're going to make this quick. So just when we're done, come right over in front of the door, microphone. And by the way, we cannot ask questions. You can only make comments. I just wanted to clarify as well.
well, I was about to ask Mr. Moderator if I could distribute a handout to the people who are here.
That you can do.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bud Morton, and I live at 290 Sasko Hill Road and have lived in town for now more than 20 years. Thanks for this opportunity to say a few words to you on this important subject of the budget, and thanks to all of you once again for your willingness to commit all this time and effort to public service. Obviously, it is not easy, and it requires an enormous amount of your time, and we should all be very grateful for your willingness to do that. My message is very similar, I think, to that which you have heard from David Becker, which is that it's very easy to get lost in the details of these budgets, get lost in the weeds, and miss the really big picture, which I think is about affordability. And the handout that you have addresses the question of affordability. I can't represent that it is definitive in terms of measuring affordability, but it perhaps is a start in the right direction of getting everyone in this room to think about how you measure the affordability of what we are spending in town right now. So I think that the sustainability of any town is in fact a function of affordability, and that Fairfield is at risk because our tax rate is now substantially above that of towns with which we compete. One great example of that is Greenwich, which offers a 55% discount to any resident of Fairfield who moves there into a comparably valued home. The discount for just moving next door into Westport is 46%. Those are pretty astounding numbers, I think. As shown in column 1, the tax rates are substantially higher in towns where property values have been largely destroyed. And I think there is a necessary connection between property
Mr. Martin,
values and
I
tax
just want to
rates.
tell you, you have very little time left, and I can't give you the floor to explain this for 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to make your point, and I have to do it. I'm not trying to do any other thing, but I got to move this. So if you want to explain the
Okay,
sheet.
well then, yes, then I will simply refer to the fact that one of the reasons, not the only reason, that our taxes are so high in Fairfield is a function of the amount of money we spend on our very fine school system. And if you look at columns 2, 3, and 4, which look at the cost per student and the median household income in Fairfield, and then at the final column, you will see that in Fairfield, we are spending substantially more relative to the income of the people in this town than are those other communities. And so I would like to speak in favor of the proposal that you have heard from David Becker to look at the budget from the top down instead of the bottom up. And I'll
Okay.
stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if anybody here feels they didn't finish their statement, they're welcome to email the body. Our email addresses are on the website, so if you want to complete it, you're welcome to email us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evelyn Reynolds. I live on 169 Rock Major Road in Fairfield. My husband has been a resident of Fairfield for 53 years. I have been a resident for 20 years. My husband is 67 years old. He has lost 50% of his business, which is out of $50 million a year. They only make $7 million a year. I work well, it's not funny, because from that amount of money he lost, he couldn't rehire 56 of his full-time employees. And that's all because of the bad economy. Now, I work 7 days a week in my own business. We're trying to save every single dime we can save. And we are planning to move to Florida by the end of the year because we can afford the same lifestyle we used to have here in Florida for a third of the cost. And we will enjoy greatly. The last push-up was when we got the bill for his beach sticker. He's 67 years old, and he now has to pay for his beach sticker. Is there anything being done for the elderly in this town? Every elderly who can no longer afford to pay the taxes on their homes they have owned for 50 years, for 60 years, or however long, they all have to go and sell now because they can no longer afford to live in beautiful Fairfield. So, it's a shame. I'm ashamed to tell people I live in Fairfield. Thank you.
Please hold your applause. I don't know how many times I get asked.
Suzanne Miska, 123 Rygate Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. I kind of don't know where to begin because the RTM's been meeting for a month now, and I'm amazed that this is the first public comment that you all have allowed us to have. We went up and down Independence Hall for subcommittee meetings, but this, after we receive a notice that everyone wants to take 2% across the board, is the first time the public has been asked to speak. Now, I already spoke at the Board of Ed meeting. I didn't like the budget, okay? And the reason I didn't like the budget is, to me, there wasn't enough in there for the kids of this town. And then I look at you, and you're all sitting here telling me how you want to cut $2.9 million out of this budget, of which you all voted for the union contracts to increase the salaries by 2.2%. 80% of the Board of Education budget is numbers that you have all helped to create in salaries, health care, unemployment. And so to sit here now and see that I'm going to sit here and watch you take $2.9 million off of a budget that is so lean to the kid side is ridiculous. I've lived in this town for 50 years. I went through the Fairfield Public School system. In good times, I don't think you have people standing here going, please let me pay more. I understand the economy is bad. I completely understand that. But these cuts, as random as they are, I just don't think are fair. I don't understand why this body has decided to run outside the scope of the way they've done it in the past, which is a line item by line item and make the tough call. This just passing it along to somebody else is, I think, a very easy way for this body to go away from it.
Hi, I'm Don Burton. I'm a Fairfield citizen, and I couldn't disagree with that more in the sense that, you know, we've just heard from people how everybody is suffering and everyone's taking cuts. We're not talking about cuts here. We're talking about reducing increases. Completely different thing. I think we should be talking about cuts, very deep cuts, but for whatever reason in the process, it hasn't been done up to this point. And now we have an opportunity to say, why hasn't it been done? Why haven't you had these conversations when you're in the BOE meetings? Why haven't we cut much more aggressively? I don't understand the process. And then to get caught up in these procedural issues of, oh, it's got to be line item by line item, how silly. I mean, corporate America operates by saying, going back to the person that knows that department best and saying, you do the 2%, not somebody else who has no idea what your department is. I mean, it's just illogical. And it's just, it's like, why are we getting caught up in procedural issues? I mean, let's try to do the right thing. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to try to do the right thing. And it doesn't sound up to this point in time that the process has allowed that to happen. And we should be talking about cuts, real cuts, because as Bob's memo that I hope everyone reads, Fairfield is not affordable, period. Everybody's taking cuts and everyone's going to be moving out of Fairfield, okay? So if you want to have a citizen base, you got to be serious. You got to talk about real cuts, not just reducing increases. There are no cuts being discussed tonight. These are fictitious budgets, and we're not cutting last year's budget, which we should be doing. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mottola. Sir? Sir, could I ask you just to identify your address? I do want everyone to say their name and address, as we always do.
1376 Pequot Avenue.
Okay. 1376 Pequot Avenue.
Hi, Robin Orris, 53 Nutmeg Lane. I take issue with everyone saying Fairfield is not affordable. I've lived in different states. I don't know if anyone else has. I lived in Texas and New Jersey. When I moved to Fairfield, my mortgage tripled, and my property taxes stayed the same. So if you guys, Connecticut's a bargain. I don't.
All right, so everyone, I please ask you to refrain from comments. I'm sorry, you got to stop. Please don't comment on everybody's comment.
And I'm sorry that people have lost their job and they have to move away, but at least you have years and years and decades of equity in your house. If I had to move, I couldn't sell my house for what I paid for it. So I just take issue when everyone's complaining about affordability. Please don't cut the budget. The kids, they need to learn to play the violin. They need to have one-on-one instruction with their teacher. Thank you.
I don't know if you guys aren't hearing. I mean, this is ridiculous. I know it's one person. I'm asking you please to stop. Yep. I'd ask you to please leave the room. I'd ask you to please leave the room. Okay.
Hi. Meredith McCormick, Fairfield Beach Road. I'm kind of with Mr. Steele on this. I ran into a good friend when I walked into the room. We're on completely different sides of the argument, but it's great to see him. I respect him. We have a wonderful town full of diverse people, young families, senior citizens, so if we can all just kind of respect each other. I've been to a lot of these meetings. I'm happy to hear what you have to say, and I at least expect you to be quiet while I speak. So anyway, I'm not here to discuss my house assessment. I'm not here to discuss my taxes that were going to go up in this budget. I'm not here to discuss my kids that will be impacted if there's a cut in the education budget. I learned about 8 years ago when I had my first child, it's not all about me anymore. So I've heard from many of you guys on the RTM, where are the emails from all the PTA parents? Well, I got to tell you, I emailed my district. I didn't email everyone yet. Here I am talking instead. I kind of thought this budget wasn't too controversial. I'm speaking for myself, but I think that there are probably a fair amount of parents out there who agree with me. I read the budget. I went to the meetings. Contractual costs in the education side is going up 2.2%. The budget's going up 2.2%. For everything that was added in, something was taken out. Remember all the staff and programs the Board of Ed cut last year to make the budget. World languages in the elementary school, library and media staff across the district. I've heard repeatedly about the high school kids who can't use a computer lab or they can't use a library on certain days after school because there is no staff. Those cuts were not put back into the budget. None of them were, not a single one. Because Dr. Title doesn't play games. He built an incredibly lean budget with no padding. In constituent meetings and subcommittee meetings, I've heard a lot of questions about potential cost savings from retirements. They have always budgeted 10, and this year they budgeted 12, because that's what they've been seeing in the past years. He could have easily kept the budget at 10 retirements. That would have been an easy place to find $65,000 in savings. He could play the game of putting last year's cuts back in the budget and then just cut them again. But it's not the way he operates.
That's
the
2
increase
minutes.
in budget covers the increase in contractual costs. It's straightforward. It's responsible.
Thank you.
Hi, Doreen Herron, 53 Forest Avenue. I'm just going to piggyback on what
Have
Meredith
you
has
stand in
said.
front of the door?
Oh, sorry.
The open door there.
I'm just piggybacking on what Meredith said, and I'm just here to say that I am a District 1 resident, and I support the budget as is. There are some of us out there in District 1, and I'm actually a registered Republican, and I know many people in my district who also support the budget. So I just don't want to feel disenfranchised when our representatives speak that they are hearing that we should decrease the budget, because I do think that it was a lean budget, especially provided by the Board of Education. Thank you.
Elaine Thomas Davis, 206 Farmington Avenue, Education Budget Representative for Tomlinson Middle School. Dr. Title has produced the leanest, most fiscally responsible budget that we have seen in many, many years. I believe it's been since the late 1970s. I ask that you support his budget. He was given a charge, and that was to keep the budget low, come in with as low a number as he possibly could, while still deliver quality education to our students, and he did that. Please, I urge you to support the education budget as is. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julianne Sterling. I live on the Old Post Road. And I appreciate everything that everyone's been working very hard on this in the budget, and I assume the Board of Education budget is extremely lean and very tight, and they probably took out all kinds of things that everybody needs, but so have we been doing that for the last 3 years as citizens. Our taxes went up last year 25%. I used the math that the gentleman at that table over there gave us this evening about what the increase would be, and it will go up another 7%. We are taxed out. It doesn't matter if the budget is lean. The money's not there for us to give you. In our the taxes on that is a house that is evaluated at $600,000 more than we could sell it for right now. And I'm talking about the tax evaluation, the low number, not the high number. This is unconscionable that we would even think of increasing the budget this year because the money's not there. People can't afford to live in Fairfield anymore. And nobody wants to buy your house because of the taxes. And this is just a reality. I wish, we could have all the extra language classes, et cetera, in education, and I want I support the police and the firemen and everything, but you can't get, blood from a stone. So I really ask you, please don't even consider raising our taxes this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, do you need this door closed over here? This be helpful for video? I didn't know if that helped you. Over by the door that's now open. Jim.
By the door? Okay. Start the clock. I'm Jim Lee. I live at 1401 Umpqua Road. I have lived in Fairfield, admittedly starting as a toddler, since the late 1940s. I have been a member of this body, either elected or ex officio, in each of the last 4 decades. I thought when I went out of office a few years ago that I would have my Tuesday nights free, my Monday nights free, I could read more. It was not to be. This brought me out. In my years on the Board of Ed, I had worked out a private formula just to test in my own mind whether a budget was reasonable. And you can sum it up in the phrase constant dollars per pupil. You look at the cost of living, you look at whether there's an enrollment increase. If they're both going up, you add the 2 percentages, and that means you're spending the same amount of money in constant dollars on the increasing number of kids. That number this year would be 2.7% for the CPI, 0.95% for the enrollment, a target of 3.6. Needless to say, it didn't come in anywhere near that high. This budget is already cut. I was taken with the handout that shows tax rates, cost per pupil, median household income, cost per pupil as a ratio to median household income, and I thought, how can this be right? And the answer is, it depends on the number of pupils you're educating. One household doesn't educate one pupil in Fairfield. And the towns in these lists don't educate the same numbers of pupils per household. So the comparison is not going to be...
Mr. Lee, we're at 2 minutes.
Okay, stay tuned.
Jim, you can actually hand that to the lady right behind you, thanks.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Catherine Giff. I live on 11 o'clock
Just
Road.
move a little closer here. I'm just doing this for the TV, not for me. Right there,
I didn't
that's
even
good.
want to, I hate mics, now I'm on TV.
They're gonna find you either way.
I'm just going back to whether it's a department or whether it's the line item. I want you all to know that you've already committed, specifically on the Board of Ed budget, you have already approved the department budgets for $98 million in contracts for staff, $21 million benefits. So using your rationale and cutting and pasting down a whole line of take 2% off everything, if you even want to, you've already approved in your own way 120 million of the 149 million. And we knew this was going to be a problem that we were going to hear then, especially from District 1 reps, just cut from the 149 million. You already approved 120 of that million. If you want to go back to the cut, you're saying 3 million? You're saying find the 3 million in 25 million now. If you want to take your 2% cut on that 25 million, we'd be looking at a cut closer to 400,000. And that's my math right here, so hopefully I've carried the right decimals. And even that, it's going to hurt. And it's going to hurt especially. The high school took big cuts last year. This year, the elementary schools have asked for very few things. Don't pit the town against elementary or high school. But look, you've already done the 120 million. It's not fair to go back and say, find 2 million of that, or 2% of that, okay? You should have seen this in the planning. Look a little forward. If you want to take your 2%, maybe on what you did not approve, and send that back to the department head. That maybe we could live with, and we've still suffered. Thank you. All right, Mark by the door.
Microphone in hand. My name is Lisa Havey, and I'm speaking on behalf of the PTA Council of Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm speaking on behalf of a membership that's just shy of 10,000 members. I'm going to try to divide my time and give a minute to PTA Council, and then I have my own personal opinions. But as I'm speaking for PTA Council, I have no personal opinions. What the council believes in is higher education. What this RTM is looking at is mediocre education. Many people are moving into this town for our education. They're moving into this town because it's a beautiful town, and it had a reputation of supporting its seniors, its town folk, its services, its police, its fire. It had a reputation of being a safe, beautiful place to live. Many, many years ago, my grandfather was in insurance in New York City, and when he found out I lived in Fairfield, he was really impressed. He thought, that's a great town. It's been a great town for forever. I don't see it being a great town forever anymore. Education is what drives so much of what people look for in a town. Class sizes are extremely important. Sports, extremely important. I have two boys. They don't play any organized sports outside of rec. But sports are important. It builds community. This is a beautiful community, and we need to continue to build it. And that's all I'm going to say tonight. So thank you very much, and please don't look for your PTAs to support capital funding. It's against PTA regulations. It goes against 501Cs. People can be sued and lose everything. So please don't think that PTAs are there to support technologies and all of that, and I'm very happy to provide a document from the National PTA Council.
And that is 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Iacono, Chairman of the Fairfield Board of Education. I've appeared before all of you on behalf of our school board, and as I've explained in the past, this is the leanest and lowest increase that the Board of Education has ever put forth in far back history that we can go, and it's at least back to the 1950s. We've really tried to understand our population, which is growing enrollment, and yet we still came in with less of an increase. We understand the taxes. We understand what we have to pay. There's 9 members on this Board of Education who all live in town, and a superintendent that all live in town. We get it. We understand, but we really need to sustain our program, and that's what this money will do, so I ask you to support it. You've given us a week to come up with something to come back, and all I'm going to be able to tell you is that this will cut services and programs. At a number like $3 million in the next week, I will not be able to tell you we do not have a Board of Education meeting between now and Monday. We have not assembled as a board, so I cannot come back here and tell you what specific program and services will be cut, but it will be a cut to services and program. And you need to think about increasing the unemployment line if this cut goes through. Thank you.
Hi, Neil Fink, Crest Terrace in Fairfield. I came here tonight expecting that there would be some type of cut, but not the draconian one being discussed right now. Had Mr. Becker given any inkling of his intentions before tonight, believe me, this room would be far, far, far more crowded. I'm not excited about paying another $500 a year in taxes. Nobody is. My wife has been unemployed for 2 years. I run a small business that struggled through the economy, just like many of you in this room tonight. However, I know that our situation and my family's situation is a temporary one, a short-term one, and we moved to Fairfield for the long term. Costs go up, school populations grow, employees do deserve raises that frankly aren't even at the level of the cost of living. So my wife and I know, and I think many people here know, we need to pay these costs, even if it does hurt. We talk about shared sacrifice. Some of the shared sacrifice means that I need to reach into my pocket. The notion that cutting every department proportionally will result in some sort of fair distribution is just completely preposterous. If you haven't done the analysis to see which services are provided by each department and which citizen groups would be most impacted by the cuts in that department, then you have no idea who's actually bearing the sacrifice. My message tonight, more than anything, is that I implore this body, the people in this room, to consider carefully the risk of an arbitrary decision. The budget under consideration is the work product of hundreds of hours invested by town employees, department heads, and elected leaders. That doesn't mean it's perfect or that there's no room to move. But you're looking to make a massive arbitrary cut without knowing the impact. And some of our representatives here tonight didn't even want to hear from department heads because you're afraid the meeting could go until midnight. My message tonight is do your job with the care that it deserves. If you need to be here till midnight, or 2 a.m., or 5 a.m., or you need to meet every single night as a special meeting between now and Monday, then that's what you need to do. We elected you to make responsible decisions. To move forward with a cut this large without exercising proper due diligence would be a major, major failure in government.
We should just hand it off. It's so much easier.
Hi, Bob Greenberger, Yarrow Road. When I was on this body, I want to remind people that the Republicans proposed a across-the-board cut and were told it had to be a line item, and they withdrew the proposal then. Should be done so now. Moving on. Austerity was referred to at the beginning of the night, setting the tone. At the Board of Finance meetings, at the Board of Selectmen meetings, all those hundreds of hours that were just referred to, austerity didn't come up. Austerity never was mentioned. Nobody on those other two bodies felt this town needed austerity moves. We had those moves. Previous first selectmen laid people off, cut budgets. That was when the economy was in the toilet. The economy is getting better. We need to be looking forward, not dealing with the past. Meantime, people are on this RTM because they were elected with a vision. I'm not hearing vision with 2% across the board cuts. If the majority would like to do a 2% cut, they can propose that. I would much rather them stand up behind what services they want to see cut so that when we go into the voting booths in 2 years, we know we liked what their vision was or not. Not something that's plain vanilla like this. They want to cut library hours. They want to cut the number of policemen we have. They want to close parks earlier. I want to know what their thinking is. I want to know what that vision is. I'm not hearing it, and I don't think this kind of across-the-board cut makes any sense for the people in this town.
We're going to hand off the mic. We're going to try the microphone handoff routine. No, that's okay. I'm saying starting now.
I won't take 7 minutes like last time, Jeff. Eric Caliper, 505 Woodhouse Road. I just think that we're setting a bad precedent here by the 2% across-the-board cut. I would assume that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance probably used a scalpel to cut at the budget. And I think that the Republicans here, like they suggested last year, are just offering a very, very broad cut. And I think what it is to me is it shows lack of accountability, because I want to know where those cuts are going to be made. And I'd like to see them specifically state by which line item so that I can vote when it comes time in November. Thank you.
Hand off.
Hi, I'm Mary Hogue, 165 Stonewall Lane, and I actually, it's sort of related to the budget, in that I have invitations up here for all of you for our, PTA is sponsoring something at Fairfield Woods. It's called Arts in Action, and some way I think it's related to the budget because it shows that it's totally funded by the PTA and the community. We have a huge assortment. I think there's about 80 classes, and they're contributions by the community. And I think that it's really important to remember that that's such a big, important part of Fairfield, that it's a very strong community, and I really would love that we work together. Not related to Fairfield Woods PTA. I don't want to put any words in anyone else's mouth, but I don't think across-the-board cuts is wise. There are a lot of implications and a lot of things that happen when you take something away. You have a ripple effect, and you have to see what that means. and it affects our community. So there is that circle back to the community. We really need to protect our community, whether it's through budgets or otherwise. That does affect our property values, whatever else that you want to do. You want to make sure that you don't just do a broad cut, because I think it would be a mistake and it would be a disservice to all of us. So please pick up your things because you'll save us postage.
They're up here for those of you who would like to get one at the end of the meeting.
Kelly Dunn, 205 Tucker Hole Lane. I have to say I'm quite disappointed. The Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen did an excellent job. They did everything they could. They spent hours and hours and hours looking at all aspects of the budget, and I find it very disrespectful. Thank you.
Right over there. Yep.
Hi, Mike O'Donnell, 67 Old Dam Road. I'm not disappointed. I think your job is ridiculously difficult, and I think you're making it harder. You know, I'm looking at this sort of from a big picture. One of the things I noticed in the budget this year is that, Mike, you've been working hard on trying to shore up our AAA rating for the bonds. And why could this be at risk? You know, every credit rating is the same. Your ability to pay back the note is in question. And I believe the approach that the advice you got was you need to shore up resources, because if there's a hurricane, this, that, and everything, that's what puts us in the situation where we might not be able to pay our bills. The fact is, we're there because our bills are so high. We're there because our debt load has climbed unbelievably. The ratings agency are questioning our ability to tax the citizens sufficiently to pay it down. So I don't like this cut, and I'm sure nobody does, but at the same time, at what point are we going to start? At what point are we going to say we can't continue to spend more every year, every year, every year, every year, every year? And it's not actually a cut, it's a reduction of increase. At what point do we bend this curve over? Do we wait and put it off and put it off and put it off until we actually do lose that rating, until all of this is out of control, and then it's a severe cut that we don't have a choice about? Or do we start getting good at it now? And this idea that you all are responsible to define how managers are going to cut their budgets, I think, is preposterous. I was a manager. I find that quite disrespectful. That's their job. Either they can do it or they can't. I have opinions how the police can cut their budget. I don't think they want it. At the end of the day, you need to send them the message. Look, the debt's climbing. Can't tax forever. The values are going to fall. The managers need to come to you with this. I do support this small reduction as beginning to move in the right direction of saying we have got to learn how to run the town better. We don't have the commercial real estate to fund it. We're not Greenwich. So what are we going to do? We've got to get more creative. But at some point, we have to bend over the spending here. We've got to slow it down.
That's time.
Thanks.
Yes.
May I make a motion?
To
suspend the rules to go beyond 11 o'clock?
Sure. We're not to take up any other items anyway, so really the suspension of the rules is to not go past 11:30, and that's fine. So the motion is made to suspend the rules to Rule 36, and this does not mean we go to tomorrow. It just means we keep going versus ending at 11:30. So a second. I'm sorry, Representative Garskoff. We need 2/3 vote. Otherwise, we do end at 11:30 and do not continue tomorrow. 11:30, take up new business after 11, but there is no other new business, so it's to continue this discussion until 11:30. So by voting yes here, we continue on. Voting no, we stop at 11:30 no matter what. All those in favor of suspending the rules to go on indefinitely, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please raise your hand. I'm going to call out the names. Representative McAleese, Representative Dean, Representative Hopkins, Representative Brogan, Representative Stopa, Representative Schwartz, and Representative Hugg. And Representative, I got you, Campbell. Anyone else? Abstentions? Okay, so that passed. Rules are suspended. We can continue.
Thank you.
Now yours.
Hi, I'm John Levinson. I live on Harbor Road in Southport. I've written to many of you, so you've gotten more details, but I just want to make a few points. The first one is, for perspective, we've had a 6% per year, on average, increase in our spending for the last decade, okay? Plus, we've gone way up in debt, and I don't have the statistics, because I don't have the ability to get them right now, but we've got about $200 million worth of debt. That's layered on top of and goes beyond the budget, okay? So the 6% is way understated. And we should realize that and come to terms with it, especially because we keep putting things that are really operating things rolled up into a bond, so they avoid the budget and won't make that number bigger. We've got a 4% budget that was passed by the selectmen, that was passed by the Board of Finance. Mr. Becker's proposing a 2%. I don't see any difference between those. I want to see a 0%. I think we have to start to hold back spending because we're spending beyond our means. That's the first point. Second point, the line items. It makes no sense to think that any one of you in this room could figure out how to best allocate money throughout the police department, throughout every school in town, throughout every area of operations. That's what the people who run the operations are for. Mr. White's been here for a long time. He knows more about operations than any single one would know, let alone collectively you all. That's absurd. I don't know how you do it legally or procedurally, but it should be allowed to make cuts, pass them down to the people who really know what's going on. Third point, we're really spending beyond our means. I know this is hard. We're really spending like we live in Westport, but we don't live in Westport. And we chose not to live in Westport. But we are spending like we live in Westport.
Sir, that's 2 minutes. Sorry. No, sorry.
Well, until somebody comes.
Well, I ought to give you time just for that one, because that was good. Sir, I can't do that.
Now, our house
It's an aspect of being fair to everyone. I can't do that.
I understand.
But that was very clever. You do still have the mic.
I would like to pass my time to John.
I wish I could do that too.
Why
Nice
not?
try as well.
Why not? Because otherwise you're going to have to listen to me for 2 minutes.
Well, I'm happy to listen to you.
I'm not so sure you will be happy.
Well, over 2 minutes.
I'm Jim Wickersham. I live in Southport. I've lived in this town for about 40 years. And quite frankly, I'm appalled because I don't see the quality of living in this town improving in the last 40 years. The roads are getting worse. We build Taj Mahals for schools. They don't help the education system. When I was manager of Memorial Sloan Kettering, I had to cut the research budget 10%. I had to do it for 3 years. Think about it. That's about a $30 million reduction every year. I had to lay off people. I had to close labs. We had to pick out those pieces of research that we couldn't follow. Maybe if we'd been able to follow them, some of your parents would still be alive. I think we've got to learn to cut the budget. I suggest that instead of piddling around with a little 2% increase or decrease, let's cut the budget 5%. Forget about the procedures. Tell the first selectman and the chairman of the Board of Education that this is what they're going to do. Let them do it. That's what they're paid for. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public?
I'm Jim Bohan. I live on Station Street in Southport. I just retired after 50 years at one of the most respected companies in the world. It's a $6 billion company. We had a president of that company who said, I can get 10% out of any budget by banging on the table. So I couldn't agree with Jim more. At this division that I work for, a $6 billion thing, the management council didn't do the detailed cuts. That's what department heads are for. We pay them a lot of money. That's their job. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Ellen Levinson, and I live at 883 Harbor Road. I also agree that we should be keeping our budget flat and that we need to do something about the costs, the money that we're spending. and I don't really know I don't have an exact point, but I feel that the Board of Finance could work a lot harder. I don't want to insult you, but I would like to say, I would like, you know, think about where else you can get revenues besides from all the residents and their real estate taxes. Think about, I also agree about the spending. Things can be cut. It's not easy, it's going to hurt, but all of us here, even the people who claim not, everybody is pinching in their pocketbooks and saving money and saying they're not spending money on different things. So I really urge you that I think as time goes on, more and more people who agree with what I'm saying are going to be coming to these meetings this year, next year, and having our voices heard, so that you will look to do things like think a little harder about union raises and 401ks and pensions and those kinds of things, because those are the kind of things that can save money. So, anybody else?
Any other members?
How do I do this thing? Is that on? It's on?
Yep. Just come over this way. Perfect. No.
Is it on? You can hear me? I don't think you want to hear me. Did you see this? Who are you? You know.
Can you please state your name and your address? Name and address, please.
My name is Virginia Sanford.
Okay.
I live
Address.
on Hillside Road. I am furious. You know, everybody has to give. People move in town, all these lovely people. I've lived here a long time. I've educated my children. They move in town, they educate their children, their taxes don't even cover the expense of their children, and then they move out. And how can they say we have a lovely town? You have got to cut. My taxes have gone up 100% in 7 years, and this is not acceptable. I like my house. I would like to live here. My house is not a new house, and you have got to do something. Right, close the libraries. Tell the children they can't have everything. Your schools are the state of art. My son, who went to private school, went to college, went into, I think it was Andrew Ward or one of the Ludlow. He couldn't believe the luxury that these children have. You want to give them an education, but he said they don't need all that equipment. Anyhow, I would like to see you cut the budget, and I don't need to pay any more taxes. In fact, maybe I won't pay them, and I guess maybe then you'll put me in prison. I am really furious. And all these people that say about their lovely little children, well, why don't they pay their own way? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Hi, Jeff Melaragno, Black Rock Turnpike. So I know that a lot of people have been saying and making comments about the size of people's houses. I attest to you, my house is very small. And it doesn't matter either way. If your house is big or small, you still pay the same in taxes based on your percentage of value. So at every proposal that comes out, the first thing that always gets proposed to be cut is some giant thing like Medicare or Social Security on the federal level. And then we find out that the GSA spent $800,000 on a convention. And that just goes to show that there is stuff that can be cut out of budgets and nobody is going to feel it. Just because you throw up all these big sirens and everything like that, no pun intended, about the proposed cuts to the public safety, but there are things that can be cut without a sacrifice being felt by anybody. We've been beaten into our heads that quantity of money equates to the quality of a product that comes out, and that's simply not the case. The only thing that guarantees is, because it's been beaten into our heads so much, is that everybody thinks that. And because people think that, everybody thinks that if a budget that they have a pet project involved in gets cut, they're going to feel something from it. And it's simply not the case. So we really need to keep that in mind, that you can cut. It may be tough. Some people may have an issue with it. But in the long run, we need to do this. We need to bend the cost curve down. We can't keep paying what we've been paying, and people just can't afford it, whether you live in a house my size, which is 1,300 square feet, or if you live in somebody's that's 13,000 square feet. It's just not it's sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members?
Good evening. Bill Malczewski, 60 New Street, Fairfield. I've heard a lot of great comments from people on both sides. One of the things I do with my business is I actually go in and help Fortune 1000 companies, Fortune 500, worked with many Fortune 100 companies, and cut tens of millions of dollars from the budget. Nobody got fired. They were stronger afterwards because we found a lot of inefficiencies that existed in every department. And I've worked and lived through my business in 12 different states. I've been involved in governments there, and I've seen how they worked. I also speak domestically in international conferences, and I just came from an area where the entire country is debt-free. They had debt, they paid it down, they didn't want to go back. It's now a rule, and they're a very thriving economy. They have services, they have an excellent educational system, much better than we're seeing here. And both sides of the aisle, very far left, centrists, liberals, extreme conservatives, all got together, and there's no debt. You can go through and look at each of the departments and find efficiencies and processes of how everything is working internally, how people communicate. There's a lot of that I've seen throughout the years that just eats up budgets because it's very inefficient. And if the opportunity presents itself, I'm happy to provide a little bit of information. I'm not looking to pitch for my company. I'm not saying you should hire me. My point is that I'd like to help. But the point is that looking beyond just a simple 2%, look at how the money is spent, and if you look down internal and you think about it, there's a lot of just dead wood and waste in these budgets that can go. You can still offer the same services, and at the end of the day, everybody will be happy. You just got to learn how to internally make yourselves more efficient so that externally you can provide what you want and make things happen in the town. I don't know how else to put it succinctly, but you can't keep raising taxes to cover for inefficiencies, either in business or in government, and that seems what we're doing because it goes up every single year, and there's really no money. I've had to move my business out of town, and there's no more money to pay. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay. Thank you all, by the way, for coming here and expressing your opinions and your thoughts. We're coming back to the body now, and we can continue discussion as long as you'd like, and we'll go from there. Representative Palmer.
Joe Palmer, District 4. The thing that I think has been missing from the conversation here is that we had a $10.4 million increase last year. We've got a $10.6 million increase on the table here, and there's not one thing that I've seen from the town in terms of restructuring or concessions from the unions that will make me believe that there won't be one next year and the year after that. So the town, it's not just about paying high taxes, it's about a trajectory that the town is on in terms of what our tax liability is going to be, or what our liabilities are from a debt perspective, from a retirement benefits, health care, all those sorts of things. So this isn't just a way to help ease the tax burden. This is a necessary thing that we're trying to do here to get a conversation going about how to break the cycle of annual increases. It's simple as that. So we can either look at this as, let's come here every year, assume that we're going to have a 4% tax increase, get the buy-in from the public on it, and go along, and we can see what we can do to keep trimming the budget down. Or we can look at something to do here serious and force some serious discussions to actually break the cycle. So thank you.
Yes, Representative Meyer.
Gaylord Meyer, District 1. I have to say that I will not support this budget that has been presented to us. I was really disappointed that we didn't come in with a decrease. I believe that we have to make some serious changes here, and every one of us on the RTM, in our town, in our schools, in every committee is going to take a hit and have taken a hit. And I remember being on the other side last year, and I haven't quite decided which is worse. But the nickel diming that goes on here, the bottom line is we can sit here and take $100 here, $1,000 there, $5,000 there. The reality is we're spending more money than we're taking in. And that's physically irresponsible. And I said it last year, and I'm going to say it again this year. We got to dig deep. And I think that I have traveled all over the world, and I've even built schools in Ethiopia. Our children are so well educated. They have every opportunity that they could possibly ever want. Whereas we build schools in other countries where they don't have chairs, they don't have gyms, they don't have a baseball, they don't have language, they don't have music, they don't even have food. But they have one teacher with a little tiny blackboard and a will to learn. And that's what we're paying our teachers to do. And I think that we need to keep that into perspective. Our kids are okay. This is not a decrease. We are just cutting the increase. Again, we have to remember fiscal responsibility. And I ask you to please, please consider that. It's getting too expensive to live in this town. Thank you.
Any other members? Representative Mirabili?
Nick Mirabili, District 9. And briefly, my personal opinion, and I've been on the RTM for a number of years, is pretty much in line with what Joe Palmer recently said, which is my major concern, without talking nitty-gritty, without talking about departments and not talking about, you know, how we're going to cut this and where we're going to cut it, is the fact that the budget has increased $10 million and $10 million and $10 million in 4% and 5% and 6% increases year after year for the past 7 years. And again, that's on the low side because of the amount of debt that we're doing and the amount of borrowing that is going on in this community. So, you know, I was elected to speak not about my personal feelings, and my taxes are high and I'm unhappy about it, but I was elected by the constituents in District 9, and I'm talking to them. I'm out and about. I have 2 children in school, one at Riverfield, one at Roger Ludlow Middle School, active in the community and sports and church, and everybody's either telling me face-to-face or they're sending me emails that taxes are too high, and they think I'm here to reduce their taxes. So, you know, that's my intent, and that's what I'm trying to do, and I think that's what the proposal that was brought forth on the table of the 2% decrease, and we have to focus on that. And I did get emails from families that are concerned about the Board of Ed budget. And do I think the Board of Ed budget can take a 2%? Probably not. That's probably a big cut. These are things that we're going to hash out this week. And I'm not saying that I'm in favor of it, you know, that type of cut to the Board of Ed. And I know Board of Ed, I know education's important to everybody, and that's really what most people are going to be passionate about because it goes back to the children. And I understand that because I have children, and I don't want the school budgets to be decimated. But we have to realize, as was just mentioned, these children are not suffering. The kids aren't suffering in school. They have everything. They've got tons of stuff. And I think that we need to dig deep, and I'll do the same, and no more iPads or iPhones for my kids. Thank you.
Any other members? Yes. Yes. Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to step up to make a correction on a comment that I believe one of the members of the public had said, talked about overtime being used in the calculation of the pensions, and I just want to point out that in Fairfield, that is not done. The pensions are based on the salary without overtime. And it's part of that calculation, and as part of the calculation, there are earnings that go into the pension.
I did see Representative Braun. Raise your hand.
Where do I stand here? Pardon me?
A little closer to the door, Kathy, behind you. Is that good?
I think we should hire Mr. Wilczynski. Is that your name? I really liked what he had to say. I think we are in difficult times. I don't know when the economy is going to improve, if ever. I don't think housing is going to bounce back. I do real estate. I don't see a whole big bounce back of real estate values. I also think department heads should be responsible for making these cuts on their own. I read Attorney Lesser's letter dated April 10th, and my understanding is that we could go by department as opposed by line. That's a very tedious, ridiculous process where you're knocking $500, $1,000. The fact is 2% is not a cut. It's actually, by my calculations, it allows a 5.8 or so $1 million increase over the prior year, which is approximately a 2.2% increase, depending on which rounded numbers you use. So there is no cut, it's an increase. We have to think outside the box. We have to think of efficiencies. We have to think about salaries shouldn't be going up. I noticed in this budget, most department heads took a 1 or 2% increase in salary. I don't know why. I represent corporations. I don't think the head of the corporation should take an increase when the company's in trouble, and the same thing with department heads and assistant department heads. I won't go into all the anecdotal evidence that I've heard over the last few weeks, but there's plenty of fat in this budget, I can tell you that. So basically, I'm supporting the cuts that are being proposed to the increase. I wish they could be higher, but I don't think it could pass. Thank you.
Representative Garth. I want to go here because it was a hand up earlier, Representative Ambrose.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. You know, the tide has changed. And I think we've reached the point where we really have to make some hard decisions, and we've got to address the budget issue head on. I see every day clients come into my office and they're selling, they're moving outside the town of Fairfield, they're moving outside the state of Connecticut. And the concern that they have is the increased taxes are driving them out. Yeah, there's been an increase of real estate activity lately, but it's been short sales. And it's been the sales below 300,000 or 400,000. And those that are really suffering are paying the higher taxes. That is, the houses that are valued over $600,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 are paying more in taxes, and their houses are not selling. So it's a very stable or stale market for those trying to sell their homes that are $700,000, $800,000 and up. And I see a lot of residents just bailing out of town, and I think that's a shame. I've been here for 50 years, and my father was a school teacher here and taught for 40 years in the Fairfield school system. He was a teacher, not an administrator. And I have a great deal of respect for the town of Fairfield and for its educational system. And Dr. Title, I commend you for the job that you've done and bring back credibility to the school system. But I really think that we have to, as representatives of our constituents, express a good deal of holding back and addressing this budget issue. I cannot support the budget as it now stands. I think we've got to take a stand. I think we've got to say, hey, well, leave it to the department heads to cut the budget items. They know better than we do from where to take the money. And I take some objection with some of the comments that were addressed tonight, because they accuse the members of the RTM of passing contracts. Well, in many instances, we had no choice but to pass contracts, because had we not passed the contracts, they would have gone to arbitration and we would have been stuck with a worse deal. And we have to leave it to Mr. Tetreault, the Board of Selectmen, to negotiate contracts going forward that we can support. So again, I implore you to really think hard about this, and notwithstanding your political affiliation, we're all residents of this town. And we really have to take a look at the long run. I want to stay here. I want to remain here. And I have a vested interest in this town. I love it. But I think we need to address the tax issue. Thank you.
Representative McKenzie.
David McKenzie, District 3. I want to agree with those that have already agreed with the cut. I agree with the 2% cut, which is really a 2.2% increase, and when you add on the tax factor, it's really a 2.9% increase. And earlier, some people were saying that a 2% cut is draconian. But nobody would say, nobody has said a 2.9% increase in taxes is draconian, but it is. It's too much. The other thing that I hear all the time that I think we ought to be mindful of, and that is when people talk about what they'd have to do when they cut, it's always flesh, as if there is no flab in a department. And we know there is. So we have to be careful that we don't get, for example, when the education is cut, teachers get cut. But actually, it doesn't always have to be teachers. It can be peripheral jobs. It can be nice-to-have things. So I'm endorsing the cut. 2% is not draconian. It's quite doable. And it still is not enough from my point of view.
Representative Hopkins. And then, yep.
Kevin Hopkins, District 7. The cuts that have been proposed by the majority, if they're going to go forward, they have to be done so on a line item by line item basis. That's the way this is my third budget session since I've been on the RTM, and that's the way we've always done it. I remember last year when the majority's cuts were proposed, they were done on a line item by line item basis, and that's the way we have to do it. Our town attorney's given us that opinion, and his opinion is going to be final for us. So they have to be done on a line item basis. You know, the drivers of this budget are not in the departments. The departments have been pretty good with their what they've come forward with. So has the Board of Education. We just can't help the reality that there are some things in this budget that are going up. Paving is an issue. That's $1 million right there. The people proposing this budget propose putting it on the regular budget. So it's a change, and that's just something we have to live with. It's not the budget, it's not the townside departments that are doing this. I think they did a great job of keeping their budgets under control. And to go in and punish them now or trying to make them come up with more just doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Representative Garskoff.
Josh Garskoff, District 5. I think we all would like to keep taxes as low as we can. We also need, and I think we all would agree about this, to maintain this town and what this town is. And I think it's a balancing act. I think we may have different points on the balance beam that we find individually as board RTM members, but I think we need to balance the need to keep costs low with the need to keep Fairfield strong. And that also affects all of us and our home values and our ability to sell. There is a point, we may disagree about what that point is, but there is a point when you cut too much and your value goes down because of those cuts. If you were to decimate the schools, I'm not saying anyone's trying to do that, but in an extreme case, if the schools were decimated, I think we could all agree that that would be harmful to our real estate values and to the town and to the commercial base and to everybody. So we all disagree about where that point is, or many of us do, but I think we could probably all agree that there is bad outcomes from taxes that are too high or from cuts that are too high. And so that's one point. And the other point I wanted to make is I did request before that maybe next week those 4 departments, could be prepared to answer questions. And I did hear Ms. Iacono said that those answers may be hard and not super specific. But I want to just add that I think given that we do have a week, I think there's hopefully we could talk to other departments besides just those 4 at that time. Thank you. Maybe even prepared to be talked to all of them. Thank you.
I think a good idea would be those departments that you want to respond.
Okay.
If you let me know.
I could let you know right now.
You do it.
Right now, I would say the ones that jump out at me, besides the 4 I mentioned, which would be Board of Ed, Fire, Police, and Public Works, would be also Health, Solid Waste, and Library, all which just seem to have larger dollar cuts. That was Health, Solid Waste, and Library. Thank you.
Any other members? Yes, Representative Lee.
Ken Lee, District 10. Some years ago in my youth, there was a show called Saturday Night Live. And they used to have a routine with Chevy Chase and Jane Curtin when they were broadcasters. It was really pretty funny. And towards the end of it, they had a character, Emily Latella, and she used to come in and she would be commenting on a news story. But it would turn out that the word that she heard was not the word that they said. So she'd go on this long conversation, and at the very end, Jane Curtin would interrupt her and say, no, that's not the word, it's this. And she'd go, oh, never mind. We're going to consider a budget, and we're going to vote on a budget, and we're going to live with that budget for the next year. 6 months into it, if we find that we have made some errors, we won't have the luxury of saying, oh, never mind. We'll be stuck with it. Personally, I know that I'm not smart enough to figure out what the right number for any department is. But I can't vote for anything until I understand what the impact of that is. I think that it's the responsible thing to find out from the departments what the service level changes will be, and there will be service level changes. We all know what percentage of the budget is contractual, people. If you're going to reduce the budget, it means you're going to unemploy people. If you have less people, then less things will get done. If it takes 20 people to clean the beach and we lay off 5 of them, those beaches will be dirty. There will be a lot of phone calls. This isn't a corporation, this is a service industry. We serve the people in the town. There's 36,000 voters, something like that. We've heard from 50 of them. There's a lot more out there. We really need to understand what the consequences of what we do is. Everybody's talked about the consequences of spending too much money, and I get that. I understand it, and it's reasonable. But we also have to understand the consequences of not spending enough to keep our citizens satisfied. And I don't think that that piece of paper does it for me. So that's just all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Numbers like this have always troubled me. I got to tell you, though, today I was in Town Hall, tax collector's office, paying my taxes, and there was a senior citizen there. And this has been bothering me all day. I guess something happened on her tax bill. I was at the cash register next to her. And maybe something happened. I don't know. Something was in arrears. She actually said to the lady, I don't have the money to pay it. There was an extra dollar amount on the bill. That really bothered me. You know, I know this doesn't happen every day, but that just stuck in my craw. It's got to be pretty embarrassing. I fell for her. I know the lady behind the counter fell for her. It pulled on my heartstrings. It really did. I do support this plan. Is it going to hurt? Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, I own my own business. I owned it for 20-plus years. I own some rental properties. This stuff is, the last 3 years, guys, has not been pleasant in any way, shape, or form. Rents are going down. Insurance, you guys are dealing with it. I'm dealing with it. Insurance is going up. Taxes are going up. Everything is going up. I'm lazy. I just want to sit back, do business the way I've done business for the last 20 years. The last 3 years, I have never worked so hard to manage my business. My wife is in private sector CFO. The last 3 years have been horrible. You walk into work, you literally walk into work Monday morning, a $250 million credit line slashed to 125. I mean, these things are happening. I've had to learn to adapt and change my way of doing business, become flexible, do things differently. I'm buying car insurance from a lizard. I never thought things like this would happen. I mean, so I think what you have to do is just start to think and do things differently. Mr. Mirabli made a great point. I mean, I buy into the fact, several years ago, I've been on this board for several years. Move forward, move forward, move forward. Where does that take us? 10 years ago, what was the budget? I mean, we got to be up $100 million, $80 million now. It's just going to keep going, going, going until we stop and just say, look, we got to change the way we do business. We got to think of different ways to do things. And I think that we got to start somewhere. It's going to hurt, but I think we start now. Thank you.
That it's a gecko, not a lizard. Any other members? Representative Stamler.
I realize it's late, and I'd love to leave the evening on that wonderful, humorous note. It really is an up note. But just for clarification, for my own understanding, it's been said a few times that the recommended 2% cut is really a reduction of increase and leaves a 2-point-something% increase. But if I'm not mistaken, by protecting what are called the major drivers, which I think is about $6 or $8 million in areas that are protected, other areas are actually not increased, but a substantial number of departments are actually decreased below the fiscal year 12 approved budget. So it's just a clarification. Is that in fact the case? I'm asking the mover of this motion.
Are you asking?
Or the recommender of the cut.
Are you asking through me?
I'm sorry, I keep making the mistake.
Okay,
I'm very
I just want
sorry.
to make sure just we're doing it procedurally.
Yes, I'm asking through you, Mr. Moderator,
So
the person who
Representative
recommended the
Becker.
cut,
Okay.
Representative Becker, to clarify that.
Becker.
And I do apologize.
No, I just want to be clear. Consistency.
The answer is yes, in a department-by-department basis. There are instances where that occurs. It's on the sheet that shows their adjustment from last year. But in the overall budget, which is what we're looking at here ultimately, the answer is no, because it's an ultimate 2.2 increase in the size of this budget, in the size of government growth, be it departmental or protecting a AAA rating, whatever it may be. Government growth is 2.2% under this proposal.
Thank you for the clarification. So in fact, many departments are not increased under this scenario. Many departments are decreased from their fiscal year 12 recommended budget. That's my understanding.
Any other members? Representative, I'm going to go Representative Palmer. Just raise his hand and we'll go to you.
Joe Palmer, District 4. Just one more comment to piggyback on what I had said earlier regarding the $10 million increases that are occurring and pretty much will be occurring in the next few years unless something changes. Those are without any new services. That's just basically the cost of our existing services from the town. Cost us $10 million incrementally each year. And that's a disaster in the making. The second thing I wanted to say was that this discussion here will hopefully build a discussion that will follow past this next week and through the summer into the rest of our term on the RTM. Hopefully this will spur conversations about thinking differently about the town, looking at, restructuring that can really save money, not $200,000 here, $200,000 there, but big money, because it's necessary. So, this is we're going to get feedback from all the departments, guaranteed via email and at the meeting next week. And, in terms of accountability, all these lines are going to come up for vote, and we're going to be held accountable. I mean, and it's going to be on record. So there's going to be plenty of accountability for each one of us on this board when it comes time to vote on these items.
Representative Meyer, and then we've already waived the rules.
Gaylord Meyer, District 1. This is a question for Mr. Hiller. In our committee meeting last week, you had mentioned that you would be going to New York to meet with Mooney's. I was wondering if you could tell the committee what you learned and what our standing is and our rating currently, this second.
We did go to Moody's today, First Selectman, myself, his chief of staff, controller, and our financial advisor. We met with them for basically 2 hours, presented the budget as it had been approved by the Board of Finance. They intend to get back to us later this week as far as any decisions that they may make. We will have a very brief period to comment on those decisions. I think they were, I'd have to say, and First Selectman can correct me if you want, I think they were favorably impressed with some of the actions that the Board of Finance has taken, particularly in what has been referred to here as some of the major drivers, which are not in the proposals that Representative Becker has put forward this evening. We addressed some of the points that, we addressed virtually every point that we had as far as the concerns with the Internal Service Fund, with the fund balance. We had the data. They obviously have the data too as far as comparative with our peers, as far as where we stand, as far as primarily within Connecticut, because each state, I think, becomes unique unto itself as to the tax structure and to the way that municipalities are financed. I think we all came out of the meeting today with what I'd term favorable and hopeful opinions. They were aware going in that this body is meeting tonight and will make decisions on the budget as we go forward. They did not opine on a level of tax increase as proposed by the Board of Finance. I think the key thing that I would have to say again, and I'm repeating myself in this, is that I think they were pleased with the actions that had been brought forward by the administration and in a sense ratified by the Board of Finance in relation to some of the areas which they had isolated some weaknesses in the past.
Would it be presumptuous then for me to think that maybe they might really appreciate this decrease from the increase?
I don't, as I say, I don't think they didn't really opine on the level of tax increase proposed. They had it in front of them. They've had it for a period of time. We had a basically 15, well, there's really more than 15 different questions that they had proposed to us late last week. We were able to respond to each and every one of them. I think their concerns have been met, and they did not express any comment, and I have to stress, any comment on the level of tax increase at all.
Thank you.
Representative Dean?
Representative Dean, District 4. Sometime in my second or third term, I remember Representative Ackley had come forward to this body and presented a percentage decrease to the proposed budget. And at that time, the Assistant Town Attorney, Kennelly, explained that it is not possible to do that, that we'd have to go through the line items and give exact amounts of what he wanted cut. And because of that generalization, Representative Ackley also withdrew his motion to cut that. Just wanted to give that point of information. I had a question for the superintendent of the Board of Ed, if that would be allowed, Mr. Moderator. I understand that there are 12... Hello. I have actually two questions for you. I'm here right with you. I understand there are 12 slated retirements this coming budget. Of those, have all 12, are they going to be retiring? And have any decided not to retire? Or have any additional retirements come about? And are we going to see any savings with that?
Hi, David Title, Superintendent of Schools. We budgeted for 12 retirements, and we have 12 retirements in hand right now. Those folks, once they retire, they're committed to retiring, so we're right on the number in the budget for retirements. And that's what we would expect at this point. We could get more. Sometimes you get retirements into July. It's just very hard to predict. So we're right on the number right now.
Thank you. I have another question for you. Okay. I also understand this time that of those 12 retirements, there are 4 principals who are retiring, and that presumably 4 staff members, highly qualified staff members, will be ascending to being principals. Not sure how the rating goes. Will there be a savings because of that change?
There could be a small savings there, but there are very few steps in the principal's salary grid, unlike the teachers that have 25 steps. So in addition, as we look to hire the best possible principals to replace, we may need to hire some people that have experience as principals from other school districts, in which case there would be just a very modest savings there. So really, the impact of the principal retirements on the budget is very minimal.
Thank you. When we had our constituents meeting on Saturday, there was quite a few people present who were complaining about the seemingly helplessness that the RTM had as far as changing how we were doing business, and that we were locked into fixed costs that we could not change because of contracts that had been previously signed. And I felt for them, because it does seem as if it is difficult for us to work around that and cut costs. Aside from that, I think the big problem here, the big question here is, how do we change that process of the contracts? And are we in need to have unions for every type of public service in our town, with the exclusion of the public service, such as the fire and the police, and more than likely public works? And I think that that's really what needs to be questioned and talked about for the coming contracts when they are becoming renewed. Do we need to have those unions in place, and is there flexibility? Also, Representative Stanler brought up an excellent point during the Saturday session, and that was, during good times, the private sector enjoys increased wealth. Now, we haven't had that in quite a few years now, since 2008 at least. And in my own business, we've seen a decrease in enrollment. And I've had that shared sacrifice by reducing my contributions for retirement in order to keep my employees from having to be laid off. They had their hours reduced, and we worked it out. They understood. Our enrollment has increased slowly, and I was able to increase their hours, and they appreciated that. We still have not contributed to our retirement. We're not at that point yet, and I understand that too. My point is that we have to look at the contracts and see if this is where we are continue to be headed with unions for all of the public employees or not. And I apologize. To Representative Stanler's point, when we are in that place where the private sector is making more, are we willing then to increase the salaries more for our public employees? That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Any other members? I'm going to go with Representative Ryan, who has not spoken yet.
Representative Ryan, District 10. This is my first time on the RTM. As a matter of fact, it's the first time I've spoke. I got involved in this because my taxes, I've lived in Fairfield for 12 years. My house has appreciated 50% since I bought it in 2000, according to the assessment, and my taxes have gone up 250%. I don't know if all of you have similar stories, but that's a good reason to start wondering, is the town being managed efficiently? Is money being spent properly? And am I going to be the pocket of last resort to continue to fund all these, as Representative Dean pointed out, unsustainable employee pensions, retirement benefits, things that will clearly put this town in bankruptcy 10 years down the road if it doesn't stop. And I really think there's a tremendous need for a structural change in the way we do things. And everybody seems to have an excuse, whether it's, well, we can't do it that way because it's we got to do a line item. That's not how the real world works. What is this, La La Land here? The real world works like every town person had got up here and said, look, you're the department head. You know how to run the police department. How am I supposed to tell Chief McNamara where he should cut 2%? That's ridiculous to ask me to do that. You know, I also heard a lot of people say they're worried about the impact of this cut. First of all, let's make real clear there is no cut here. As proposed, it's an increase. An increase. That's called government speak. Cut. Cut means a cut in the increase. You know, I want to talk about what happens if we continue to do this. My next door neighbor is suing the town, and I know he's spending 5 times what his tax increase is on his attorney. There's 170 people, I believe, suing the town for tax increases or assessments that they feel are invalid. I thought about doing that. I actually went to the town and asked them for a to reassess my house, and I got in front of this kid who looked like, you know, they hired him for $10 an hour, and I said, what am I going to spend the rest of my life trying to chase a town to save $2,000 or $3,000? You know, we all have a life outside of this, and I question, where is the town going to be if they continue to raise taxes? How many more people are going to sue, and how much is that going to cost? I would like to ask that question directly through Jeff to either Mr. Tetro or Mr. Hiller. How much has the town already spent on legal fees to defend the assessments that were levied on these people, and how much more money are we going to spend? And would that not maybe possibly even equate to the cost of what we're actually trying to save in this increase, in this cut in the budget? I'll bet it runs in the millions of dollars before we're all done, certainly in the several hundreds of thousands. So I asked that question. I don't know if anybody has the answer.
Somebody address that question?
There's a couple of different answers here. First off, as you're aware, Attorney Saxel was many of these lawsuits, the 170 that you referred to, were filed 10 months ago. And At that time, Attorney Saxel was primarily in charge of defending it. I'd have to go back and go through his bills to see what legal fees were paid for by Attorney Saxel. That ceased in November, and he has been paid zero basically since December 1st. We did incur costs with Attorney Saxel and a few other attorneys at that time. Since that time, we have retained the services of Cohen and Wolf in Bridgeport, specifically Attorney Jonathan Bowman, who is a former member of this body, who has been handling the majority of the cases. Attorney Lesser is handling a limited number of cases in which Mr. Bowman or his firm are conflicted.
Can we try to get to a number?
Yeah, we've probably spent with the Cohen and Wolf at this point in time something in the neighborhood of $75,000. And obviously there'll be more, that's basically through the end of March. There have been some settlements, roughly 25 to 30 of the cases were settled. They were in court in New Britain today. I think we can say that that I, the first selectman, and the assessor are pleased with the efforts of Mr. Bowman and many of the settlements that have been achieved.
Did you get your question answered?
The legal fees, as I say, $75,000 and I'm estimating.
Mr.
I can
Hiller.
get you more specifics. And the other piece to that would be those fees that were incurred by Mr. Saxel prior to December 1st.
It's really, my real question is I'm sure you can't give me a firm answer because there's a lot of settlements to be made, the timeline, but the reality is we're imposing a cost on the town and a cost on the residents of Fairfield that only the lawyers are going to benefit by. And how much of that amount of money could have been saved if we had a different system or didn't want to tax people what a lot of people feel is erroneously. Now, I'm not saying that was the case, but so I guess what I'm saying is there's an unknown there with continuing to raise taxes, creating more animosity and the potential for legal suits amongst the citizens of Fairfield. And so that unknown is probably is something that should be considered by those who don't like the budget as it is. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Representative Gottlieb.
Still on? Great. Since it's first timers night, Julie Gottlieb, District 6. As a point of clarification, because I heard some things both from among the body and from some of the speakers here, my personal reason for wanting more information is, as a first timer, we just sat through 4 nights of line by line understanding where people were coming in with their numbers, what they wanted, what was going to happen. There were questions asked, at least at one of the nights, every single time somebody got up there. What was the rationale? What was the impact if we took the money out, if they went to zero, if we did something else? And you came away from those meetings, or at least I did, with a very good understanding of what all those changes would do. We're now presented with something else. And I am willing to look. I understand this. I get this. I'm reading the same emails. I'm hearing the same people. I've been out of work for 2 years myself, which gives me time to do crazy things like this. And so I understand, pulling your belts tighter and understanding that. But I can't, in good conscience, go back to make a decision or go back to the constituents who are going to stop me someplace and say, well, why did you vote for this? And can you explain to me, does this mean less police cars? Does this mean we're now not going to have X amount of languages, or we're going to go to pay for play, or whatever it means for the various schools? I just want to have the same understanding that I had when we went and sat through all those meetings. And on the final point, because this keeps coming up and it's driving me a little crazy, I've been on the corporate side now for more decades than I'm going to share. But as a department head and reporting up to a CEO, when I give directions to somebody that we are going to cut whatever that percentage is, I want to know. I'm telling my people, okay, fine, go find 5%, go find 10%, what have you. But when they come back to me, I don't just take it because I assumed they could do that. Nor does my CEO expect that I made that decision, and he's not going to look at that either. I still have to sit in a budget review meeting at some point, whether it's 5 minutes or a lot longer, and just say very quickly, we're slashing X heads, we're doing this with the program, we're doing certain things. So I think the assumption that corporate America doesn't look at line by line if you're given that directive is erroneous, or at least it has been in my case. And so that is my main reason for wanting the information. I'm not against doing cuts if that's what it takes, but I want to have full information before I do that. Thanks.
Any other members? Representative Patton?
Mark Patton, District 7. I'm going to echo what Representative Gottlieb said, that definitely we need more information, especially on the big ticket items which make the majority of this cut, which are Board of Ed and a lot of public safety like police and fire. I'm all for making cuts, and even blanket cuts, and letting department heads make those cuts to decide, where that money should be taken from. 2% in my mind is kind of arbitrary. I mean, I think some places you maybe could cut 3 or 5%. But $3 million out of the Board of Ed is just insane. $300,000 out of both police and fire, when we all know that the police budget came in at about 0.5% below, so, to make a point of clarification, that is a cut. It's not an increase, as some people are saying. The police department is an actual cut if we cut 2%, and it already has been cut, 0.5% already. We just got to pick and choose our battles, and however it ends up being done next week, just be careful and make sure that we're not going to really impact things in the town where we really need it. And especially those 3 big ones, I think that's a giant mistake.
Thank you. Jim?
Mr. Moderator, through you to, I guess, Dr. Title or to Ms. Fitzgerald. There's a point raised regards to retirements, and we seem to have budgeted 12, and there are 12 right now. I believe last year we budgeted for 10. Can you please tell me the total number of retirements that came in by June 30th last year?
Last year, the original budget had 10 retirements factored into it. By the time the board got to do the $2.8 million reduction, that number had grown to 12, and so we did take the 2 as part of that cut. By June 30th, there were 5 more. They had a total of 17.
So there was, and how much savings per retirement was there last year?
It averages about $35,000 for a teacher retirement.
So basically there was, from the time this RTM voted until the end of the year, there were 7 more retirements at $35,000 savings per retirement.
That's correct.
Okay. Because we're standing here at 12 already. I mean, we have 2 months to go. I would suggest that this RTM take a look at what your estimation is for the number of retirements. And maybe it might make sense, Dr. Title, if you provided this RTM with maybe an analysis over the last 5 years of where we were on this night, not this specific date, but at this vote, or not this vote, but the first RTM meeting, what was being reported, and where we got to by the end of the year, so we could track how many retirements we're having post-RTM budget vote. So I would request that information. I'd request that it be supplied to all the members so they could properly budget it. Thank you.
Any other members? Representative Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Becker, District 1. I would note that there are, I believe, 3 ways at the end of the day to get to the ultimate budget reduction that's being proposed. And I'd also say that this is a proposal. It's being put out. I said at the very beginning that this is a conversation that we believe needs to take place. I believe it was mentioned that some departments maybe need a larger cut while some need a smaller cut, and that's what this week should be about, and that's what the next meeting should ultimately be about. But I believe that the conversation has finally, after this whole budget process, pointed down to what maybe is just possibly a tolerable increase in the overall town budget. And there, again, I said this at the very beginning, there are many ways to get there. But I think a lot of people in this body, as you know, clearly came here, I guess, ready to just roll over on a 3.9%, which is a 4.58, which I believe even higher on the tax increase, and that's a problem. But again, get back to, there are 3 ways I believe that you're going to get there. I believe that throughout the course of the negotiations and the contracts, that yes, the town needs to hold firm, and this body needs to pass things that are tough for the times, but are fair. We've said that all along. We've got a huge problem because there's tons of union contracts that are up. We have no idea because no one's doing anything about them. We're like kicking at the problem here, and they're just pent up, and there's really no progress. And it's really disturbing, and just so everybody understands, it's costing us an arm and a leg in legal fees and arbitration fees and other things that are just a complete waste. Get to the point, bring the contracts here, and then we maybe can know what those things are. And I believe that setting a lower budget here does set the tone that we clearly can't pay for significant increases there, and I believe that that will help. That's one area, and that was brought up. But, you know, another area, obviously, is the services in reduction. And I think we do need to have that conversation, what services we want, be them education or the library or the parks, and that's a conversation that needs to take place. Because, yeah, it's possible that we get to that point where within a reduction like this, we have to pare back. But those services are costing us year over year so much money that people just can't afford. Some of the people that are using these services, they can't even afford to be here to use those services anymore. And another area, this one particularly frustrates me, is there is an efficiency component of this budget. There are synergies, there are savings. It is done all over the place, and quite frankly, we expected a budget that came forward this year that was going to have some of those in there, and clearly, Mr. Tetreault, they don't. And people expected better. People were very frustrated over the course of the last decade of management in this town. And they really expected leadership in this budget, and they expected someone who was going to come in and be a seasoned manager who was going to find a new direction for this town. And they didn't get that in this budget. And there are a lot of, I've heard, you know, this is his first budget cycle. You know, I can sympathize to some degree, but I've looked around the state at other leaders from both parties in their very first budget cycle. May I note, they didn't have a 6-month running start, and they've come up with better. And it's very frustrating because there are efficiencies and there are expectations, I think, that people had for that component. It's not all of it. I don't think that the $5 million is all of it, but it's a real problem. This is a carryover budget, and people expected better. And I hope that between now and next week, when the department heads come back and they tell us their side, maybe you can come back and tell us a little bit more about the union negotiation component, and maybe you can come up with a plan as to how you're going to find synergies between these departments, maybe how you're going to work with the Board of Ed, maybe you and Dr. Title can work together. It's been talked about that the audits did not.
He's talking to the body.
I won't address directly his name, but everybody knows who I'm talking about now. So this is clear. The CEO of the town, the superintendent of this town need to work together. We had 2 audits. You know what we didn't have? We didn't have the audit that talked about how we were going to take those 2 massive, sprawling departments with duplication all over the place and save money for this town. A week's a tight time to do it, but if you could start having that conversation between when the budget is actually implemented, I think we'll be all right with a big chunk of this decrease. Thank you.
Representative Mottola.
John Mottola, District 2, midnight. I wasn't going to say anything more tonight, but I think some of you are correct and a lot of us are correct with respect to unions and collective bargaining and that we need to take a hard stand. But I have to warn this body that it's the executive branch of any town or municipality that deals with that. And for one member to stand up here tonight and say that nothing's being done is just simply incorrect. There's not reports from an executive branch about what's going on with collective bargaining. It doesn't work that way because that's the executive's job. There are negotiations, there's strategy involved. There's not an open public discussion about what you're negotiating. It doesn't work that way. And I think any executive, be it Fairfield, Bridgeport, Milford, anywhere, they have an interest in cutting the best deal for the town or any municipality. And I trust our first selectman that he's doing that. So we should support him on that. And I do agree that there are real savings with respect to public sector employees and collective bargaining. And we're doing those things. But it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. There are state laws that govern this process. You can't hit a home run overnight on this. It takes sometimes years to get where you want to go. That's the way it is. So I hear all of you. We do need to change how we do business, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm not going to gut this town and the town's services. I'm not going to support this cut because it's the wrong thing for Fairfield. But we work in a unified manner to try to achieve savings over a period of time. We can get there and have a better town. But to systematically reduce and cut as this proposal sets forth right now, it doesn't benefit anybody. Doesn't. I'm District 2. I have received no emails from District 2 people about this budget, about cutting this budget. 0. None. And you can smirk out there, some of you members. I haven't received anything. I've received a lot of emails from parents who support the school system, and quite frankly, a lot of emails from people in District 1. And I sympathize with them. I'm not sure what the situation is there. Apparently, there was something going on with their tax assessment. And there's a process that they have to go through to deal with that. And I understand that, and I do sympathize with them. But I haven't received this, as some members are making it, this wave of discontent from the entire town of Fairfield. I haven't received it. So that's all I have to say. And I think if we take a step back and work together over the next several years and deal with these contracts, which I'm sure the First Selectman is doing, we can achieve real savings. But you can't do it overnight. It doesn't work that way. I wish it worked that way, but there's a thing called collective bargaining in state law that kind of gets in our way. And that's the way it is, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side you're on that issue. So that's all I have to say.
Any other members? I can't see who that is. Oh, Representative Jacob?
Through you to Mr. Mottola, I think we all received the same emails, pro and con, and they were addressed to all of the RTM. So you got what I got, and mostly everyone else did, I think. And you certainly did hear the people tonight.
I think he said from District 2. He didn't say he didn't get any of the emails.
No,
He was
at
just-
your last statement, I
Not
thought,
correct.
was everybody, the town at large, and, no?
I heard him say
Okay.
District 2, so.
All right, sorry, but you did get the blanket emails.
I'm sure he did because he was on the email list with everyone else, but he's saying District 2. Any other members? We go on and on until someone actually has to make a motion to adjourn, so I just... Representative Schwartz, second Representative Ambrose. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Sunman, of course. I know.